Chapter 481. Whoosh, whoosh. All the king-level masters arrived at the periphery of the white light. They stared at the area that was only a few dozen square meters in size. After waiting for so many days, a change had finally occurred. They just didn't know if this change would allow them to enter the island in the spatial crack. Gray and the others arrived as well. They stood behind the kings and looked at the area covered by the white light, trying to guess its function. Be careful. The group of king-level experts was extremely cautious, warning their own snobbish people. They had already seen the spatial cracks around the island and knew that the force that had left this island behind was not simple. It was definitely a force that surpassed the Empire. If they had left behind some powerful rune mechanism, even king-level experts like them could die here if they were not careful. Since no one dares to try, I'll go first. A king from the Flame Kingdom narrowed his eyes. Whoosh! In the next moment, silver metal appeared out of thin air in front of him. It turned into a silver sharp blade and quickly collided with the white light. Everyone's pupils shrank. They were secretly on guard. If there was an accident after the collision, they would immediately retreat. However, when the silver blade touched the white light, it was dyed white by the white light. It separated from the light without any damage. No attack power. The king from the Flame Kingdom immediately rushed toward the white light. Many other kings did the same. Of course, there were also kings who were cautious and didn't rush forward. They wanted to see the situation before making a decision. Whoosh! Several king-level cultivators rushed into the area of white light at the same time. The white light enveloped their bodies. As expected, they were not injured, but that was all. Being covered by the white light, they didn't feel anything strange. It was as if they had been hit by the most ordinary sunlight. There was no change at all. Seeing these kings like this, the other kings also walked forward. They either touched the white light with their hands or stepped into it directly. Similarly, there was no change. Is it just an ordinary light? A group of king-class elites looked at each other. They had waited for so long, and finally, there was a change. They did not expect this change to be like a child's play. The white beam of light was just an ordinary beam of light. There's actually no change at all. Logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case. A king-level expert, who was also a rune master, frowned and thought hard. According to his judgment, the complex runic matrix on the white spire had more than just this. Such a huge runic matrix was the largest and most complicated runic matrix he had ever seen. It must have some kind of miraculous effect, and was definitely not just a simple white beam of light. Is it because too much time has passed that the runic matrix has become incomplete? Sensing that the white light was not much different from a normal beam of light, a king-level powerhouse frowned. Most people agreed with him. The faction that had left behind this island was definitely a faction that was far stronger than the Empire. It was very likely that it had existed before the Empire. After such a long period of time, even the sturdiest building could have decayed due to the passage of time. Due to the decaying of the building, the runic matrix had also become severely damaged, resulting in such a complicated runic matrix shooting out an extremely ordinary beam of light in the end. Just a beam of light. Gray and the others who were not king level, not too far away from the white beam of light, also frowned. They were very disappointed. This was completely different from what they had imagined, or rather, what they had hoped for. There had been such a big battle, a spatial crack, and a floating island. In the end, only a white beam of light had shot out. It was an extremely ordinary white beam of light. Someone stepped forward and touched the white beam of light like a king-level expert. Aside from a warm feeling, they did not feel anything else. They bitterly smiled and shook their heads. They were very disappointed. Let's go and take a look. Because they were the weakest, Gray and the other youths from the Four Kingdoms were protected at the back. They also stepped forward, wanting to take a closer look at the white beam of light. At the very front was Niklos Blaze. He frowned as he stepped into the white beam of light. Whoosh! At that moment, a strange change appeared on his body. Under the white beam of light, he actually slowly floated up. He followed the white beam of light and rose into the sky. He was not a king-level expert, nor did he cultivate any bird-type blood techniques. Logically speaking, he should not have the ability to fly. However, at that moment he was flying. He's flying. Seeing Nicholas Blaze's strange behavior, the youths who were about to touch the white beam of light quickly retreated. Gray and the others could not help but stop in their tracks. They looked at Nicholas Blaze, who was rising into the sky, in shock. Nicholas, the Flame Kingdom's king-level experts were anxious. Nicholas Blaze was the most talented member of the Flame Kingdom's royal family. If something happened to him, it would be too late for regrets. A Flame Kingdom's king-level expert rose into the sky and reached out to grab Nicholas Blaze. He wanted to drag him out of the white beam of light. However, he grabbed nothing. His hand passed through Nicholas Blaze's body without any resistance. Nicholas Blaze's body was still rising into the sky at a constant speed. No physical body. The Flame Kingdom's king-level expert who had grabbed nothing was stunned. However, he immediately reacted and continued to grab Nicholas Blaze. He was not the only one. The other Flame Kingdom's king-level experts also rose into the sky and used all their methods to stop Nicholas Blaze. They wanted to drag him out of the white beam of light. However, it was useless. At this moment, Nicholas Blaze did not have a physical body. He was like an illusory shadow. No matter what the king-level experts did, they could not touch him. Only when they were close to the spatial crack did the Flame Kingdom's king-level experts have no choice but to stop. If they continued forward, they would die without a doubt. The spatial crack appeared and disappeared. As expected, it appeared on Nicholas Blaze's body. However, Nicholas Blaze was not injured. His body followed the white beam of light and entered the island, finally disappearing. Nicholas Blaze went in. This beam of light can let people enter the island. Seeing that Nicholas Blaze had used this beam of light to pass through the spatial crack and enter the island, everyone's hearts trembled. They understood the use of this beam of light. Why can Nicholas Blaze enter, but not others? Everyone revealed thoughtful expressions, trying to figure out the reason. Gray could not help but squint his eyes, searching for the difference between Nicholas Blaze and these people. The king-level experts of the four great kingdoms had not changed when they entered the beam of light. The king-level experts of the four great kingdoms had also not changed when they entered the beam of light. However, Nicholas Blaze had changed when he entered the beam of light. There had to be a huge difference between the two parties, which led to the different results. If it was a restriction of strength, then it was definitely not right. Among the four great kingdoms' older generation, most of them were not as strong as Nicholas Blaze. However, Nicholas Blaze had entered while others had not. If it was a restriction of cultivation talent, then it was not very likely. In the four great kingdoms, there were even king-level existences who had transformed 3 times. To be able to reach this level, their talent was definitely terrifying. Even if they were slightly weaker than Nicholas Blaze, they would not be too far off. It did not make sense that Nicholas Blaze could enter, but they could not. Suddenly, Gray's eyes lit up. He had thought of the reason. If there was a difference between Nicholas Blaze and these people, it would probably be age. Among the people in front, the youngest was in their 60s or 70s, while the oldest was more than 400 years old. Nicholas Blaze was not even 30 years old. He was clearly much younger than these people. None of the people present were ordinary people. Almost at the same time that Gray thought of age, many people had thought of it as well. Age, it's age. If you want to pass through this beam of light, there must be an age restriction. Yes, it must be like this. Not good. Nicholas Blaze has already entered. The opportunities on the island will probably be taken by him first. We must let the younger generation enter as soon as possible. The king-level experts of the four great kingdoms hurriedly gathered the younger generation of their respective kingdoms. If nothing unexpected happens, only the younger generation will be able to enter the island through the beam of light. This time, it will depend on the younger generation. Typhony Violet's aged face was solemn as he spoke. The dangers on the island are unknown. Pay attention to your own safety. Do not act rashly. Fitch Violet reminded them solemnly. We understand. Gray, Sophia, Francis, Hylia, and the other young people of the Purple Moon Kingdom all nodded. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Almost at the same time, the younger generation of the four great kingdoms stepped into the white beam of light. Then, these people's bodies floated within the white beam of light and flew towards the island along the beam of light. Let's go. Seeing that the people in front of them had already floated towards the island, Gray, Sophia, Francis, and the others also walked into the white beam of light. What kind of technique is this? Enveloped by the white beam of light, Gray felt a slight warmth, as if he was being shone on by the sun. He looked around curiously. He found that his body was floating, following the white beam of light, and rising at a uniform speed. As he rose higher and higher, the people on the ground became smaller and smaller. Then, he saw a space crack that would make even the king-level expert's hair stand on end. Within the huge space crack, there were numerous tiny space cracks. Not only that, but there were also space cracks appearing and disappearing from time to time. He saw space cracks spreading to his body, but he did not feel any tearing sensation. Whoosh! Passing through the space crack area, there was a flash of light and shadow. Gray's vision blurred, and when he came back to his senses, he found himself in a forest. Squeak, squeak! Before he had time to observe his surroundings, a sharp beastly roar suddenly rang out. Then he saw a red ferocious beast leaping down from a tree, extending its sharp red claws and pouncing towards him. Chapter 482. Whoosh! Orange flames rose from the red ferocious beast's sharp claws, turning into a flaming claw that grabbed at Gray. Leaves were swept by the claw, and the entire tree was burned to ashes. Whoosh! Just as the flaming claw was about to hit Gray, Gray's body suddenly retreated, and the distance between him and the red beast quickly increased to a few dozen meters. Then, he looked at the red beast. It was a ferocious beast that was about 5 meters tall. Gray wasn't sure if it was a blood fiend, because its body was very strange. The surface of its body was red, and the whole body was faintly transparent. He could see inside, as if it was condensed from red mist. Gray judged that the red mist beast in front of him probably didn't even have blood. Could a red mist beast that didn't even have blood be considered a blood beast? Gray did not know, and he had never seen one before. Squeak, squeak! After missing its attack, the red mist beast jumped a few times and pounced at Gray again, with orange flames burning on both of its claws. Gray did not dodge. He pulled out the sword at his waist, and without using the blood beast's ability, he slashed with the sword with the strength of his body. Puff! The red mist beast that was pouncing at Gray was sent flying by the sword, and it only stopped after smashing many trees. One of the red mist beast's arms was cut off, and its body was almost cut in half by Gray's sword. Looking at the injuries, it was obviously seriously injured. As Gray expected, no blood flowed out of the red mist beast's body. The red mist beast in front of him indeed did not have blood in its body. Not only that, but from the almost cut open body, he could clearly see that there were no internal organs inside. Gray looked at the red mist beast in surprise and slowly walked over. This was indeed a different kind of life form from blood beasts. Just like a ghost, it did not have blood or internal organs. The only difference was that it could use its ability and physical attacks were effective against it. Squeak, squeak! Seeing Gray walking over, the red mist beast bared its teeth and pounced at Gray with its heavily injured body. Puff! In response, Gray calmly slashed with his sword, and the red mist beast's body was cut in half, falling to the ground with a thud. Squeak, squeak! The red mist beast's body that was cut in half shrunk like smoke. Gray carefully looked at it. The huge body collapsed and finally turned into 2 fist-sized red mist. The color was quite deep, and it fell to the ground, but did not merge with the ground. Green reached out to grab one of the red mist to see if he could catch it. At this moment, when Gray's hand touched the red mist, a strange scene occurred. Squeak, squeak! The red mist disappeared. To be precise, it had melted into Gray's palm. At the same time, Gray felt a wave of numbness sweep through his body. But in just a moment, the numbness had disappeared. What's going on? Glenn was suddenly startled. He stood up and carefully examined his hands and body, but he didn't feel anything abnormal. Although he was very sure that the red mist had indeed melted into his body after coming into contact with him, he was certain that it was the red mist. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with his body, Gray carefully recalled the change in that moment. Numbness, this feeling, why is it so similar to when I train? Soon, he was shocked to find that the moment the red mist melted with his body, it gave him the same feeling as when he was training. To be more precise, it was the feeling when he took a magic potion that could increase his strength. Of course, the effect was much weaker than when he took a flame potion. Could it be that this red mist can increase one's strength? Gray looked at the other mist, and after a little hesitation, he walked up and touched it with his hand. Chi-chi. After the red mist touched his skin, it quickly melted, and the same feeling appeared. His body was slightly numb, and after a moment, it returned to normal. He felt that his body had improved a little. The red mist can increase my strength. By now, Gray was sure that the red mist did have the same effect as the flame potion, which could increase his strength. A mist that can increase strength. If I can kill a large number of these mist beasts and obtain a large amount of this mist, wouldn't it be the same as taking a potion like the flame potion? Gray's eyes lit up. Maybe he could use this red mist to greatly reduce the time needed to reach the desolate level. Climbing up the tallest tree, Gray looked at his current position. He should be at the edge of the island, and in the middle of the island, there was a white spire bigger than a mountain. It emitted a hazy white light and was full of a holy aura. I entered this island because of the white light from the white spire. If I want to leave this island, I'll have to go through the white spire. Then I'll have to hunt red mist beasts while rushing to the white spire. After making up his mind, Gray started to search for red mist beasts while rushing to the white spire. Just as Gray discovered the use of the red mist beasts, the young generation of the Four Kingdoms who were scattered all over the island also discovered the use of the red mist. Puff! Sophia's body glowed with a blue light as her speed increased to the limit. The spear in her hand pierced through the throat of a red mist beast that was 6 meters tall. The red mist beast fell to the ground and turned into a ball of concentrated red mist. Sophia stepped forward and tried to touch it with her hand. The mist melted, and she felt the effects of the red mist. Her face was filled with astonishment. Whoosh! A yellow glow extended from Gallonway Austin's battle axe, transforming into a gigantic axe. Immediately, it cleaved a red fog beast into 2 halves. The red fog beast transformed into 2 clouds of concentrated red fog. Her eyes were filled with amazement as she went forward to pick it up. Soon, her eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. Puff! Scarlet Prince Lars Scarlet's sword was wrapped in lightning. He pierced through a red mist beast with a single strike, and the red mist beast turned into a concentrated red mist. Lars Scarlet went up to check it out, and soon his face was filled with joy. The young generation of the Four Kingdoms were all pleasantly surprised. They subconsciously began to search for red mist beasts to kill. At this time, Niklos Blaze, who had entered first, had already killed several red mist beasts. Roar! A red mist beast that was almost 8 meters long, its body wrapped in red flames, pounced at Niklos Blaze. Niklos Blaze snorted. Golden flames wrapped around his golden spear, and he suddenly pierced it towards the red mist beast. Puff! Under his spear, a huge hole appeared on the red mist beast's body, and its 8-meter-long body fell down with a bang. Then, the huge body quickly melted and finally turned into a ball of red mist. He walked forward and reached out his hand to touch the red mist. He absorbed the red mist with practiced ease. Although I don't know what this red mist is, it clearly has the effect of increasing one's strength, and I don't feel any side effects. As the most outstanding member of the Flame Kingdom's royal family, he received a large supply of strength-enhancing potions like the Blaze Potion every year, but he didn't dare to use it continuously. This was because magic potions like the Blaze Potion would have a residual effect after consumption. If the interval between consumption was too short, he would clearly feel the effects weaken, and his body would become abnormally heavy or even damaged. However, he had already absorbed this red mist several times, but he didn't feel any side effects at all. Clearly, this red mist was different from normal magic potions and didn't have any side effects like residual effects. At this speed, it won't be long before I reach the 3rd level of the Desolate Grade. When that time comes, even Gray Fergus won't be able to stop me. A cold look flashed across his face, and he continued to search for red mist beasts. Puff, puff. After walking a few hundred meters in the direction of the White Tower, Gray encountered a red mist beast that looked like a wild boar. Roar! After discovering Gray, the red fog beast that looked like a wild boar rushed towards Gray with its huge body. A large number of trees were knocked down by its impact. This red mist beast was 8 meters long. It was extremely huge, and its head alone was close to a meter long. Whoosh! In front of Gray, a green river appeared, and cold air filled the air. Wind blades rose and fell, and hit the red mist beast that looked like a wild boar. Roar! At this moment, the red mist beast that looked like a wild boar suddenly roared and let out a sharp cry. Under this sharp cry, the green river suddenly exploded and sputtered in all directions. A shockwave passed through the green river and hit Gray. Pa! 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 Under the shockwave, Gray was forced back several dozen meters before he could stabilize himself. Peak of the 1st level of the Desolate Grade, close to the 2nd level of the Desolate Grade. The red mist beast that looked like a wild boar in front of him was definitely close to the 2nd level of the Desolate Grade. Otherwise, the ice blades wouldn't have been shattered so easily. Puff, puff, puff. The red mist beast that looked like a wild boar continued to charge. Gray pulled out his sword, and black mist surged on the sword. It was compressed by Gray and turned into a black shockwave that slashed out. Puff! Under the black shockwave, a huge wound appeared on the red mist beast's body, and it flew backwards. The ground around it became bare, and the area of more than 100 meters was completely empty. All the plants and rocks were not blown away. Instead, they were crushed by the black fog. Something's not right. The power has weakened. Looking at the result of his sword, Gray raised his eyebrows, and there was some doubt in his eyes. The sword in his hand was from Warner Nahum, and it was a magic weapon at the peak of the Bronze Grade. With his current level of the 2nd level of the Barbarian Grade, if he activated the sword's ability, he could summon a stone giant with the combat power of a 1st level of the Desolate Grade. If he used the Blood Beast ability with it, there would be about a 20% increase in effect. But just now, he didn't feel any increase in power at all. After using the sword for such a long time, he couldn't be wrong about whether the power of the Blood Beast ability was increased. Is the sword damaged? Chapter 483. Gray sheathed his sword, and in the next moment, another sword appeared in his hand. He unsheathed the sword. It was a green sword with green patterns on the surface. The sword was about 1.5 meters long, and the blade was slightly narrow. This was one of the many pinnacle bronze magic weapons he had obtained in the secret room of the Half Moon Castle. Oh, whoa. At this moment, the red fog beast that looked like a wild boar had crawled up and rushed towards him. It opened its mouth and roared, and a terrifying invisible shockwave rushed towards him. Whoosh! The black fog wrapped around the cyan longsword. Gray slashed out with his sword, and the compressed black fog shone like a black light. Crack! The invisible shockwave was shattered by the black light. The black light once again struck the wild boar-like red mist beast, leaving a deep wound on its body. It's not because of the weapon. Looking at the sword in his hand, Gray shook his head. He still did not feel that the blood beast's ability had been increased. Clearly, it was not because of the magic weapon that his blood beast's ability had not been increased. It's probably because of this strange island that the magic weapon's power is limited. The only explanation was that the magic weapon was limited on this island and could not increase the power of the blood beast's ability. To allow people to pass through the spatial crack and to limit the use of magic weapons, just how powerful is the faction that left this island? To make spatial cracks and magic weapons ineffective, this was a method that could change the rules. Gray was extremely shocked, and he was even more shocked by the strength of the faction that left this island. Since he was still in the middle of a battle, Gray did not dare to think too much. He attacked the red fog beast that looked like a wild boar and continuously slashed out with black fog. The red fog beast that looked like a wild boar was killed and quickly melted, turning into a red fog that was even bigger than before. When he touched it, the red fog disappeared. Correspondingly, Gray's body became numb, and it took a while for him to recover. This ball of red mist was deeper in color than the previous one, and it was also larger in size. It also gave him more improvements than before. The stronger the red mist beast, the more power I will gain. It seems that I need to find more powerful red mist beasts to kill. Continuing towards the White Spire, Gray walked for more than 10 miles and killed a few more red fog beasts along the way. Finally, he entered a barren rocky area. In this area, there were rocks everywhere. There were very few plants, only sparsely growing out from the gaps between the rocks. Most of them were shrubs and weeds. There were almost no tall trees. Dong, dong, dong. Suddenly, a heavy sound rang out. It was like a giant drum being beaten rhythmically. Gray, who was moving forward, quickly flashed under the shadow of a mountain rock and used his shadow ability to completely blend into the shadows. Just by listening to the commotion, one could tell that a big fellow had appeared. Moreover, it was definitely not weak because this type of red mist beast was similar to blood beasts. Generally speaking, the larger the body, the more powerful it was. He didn't rush up to kill them because he didn't know how strong they were. Although the strongest one he had encountered so far was only close to level 2 of the Desolate level, it did not mean that there were no red fog beasts on this island that were stronger than this level. If he encountered a king-level red mist beast, he would be in danger. Although it was important to increase his strength, he had to ensure his own safety. Not long after Gray hid in the shadows, a giant beast with loud footsteps appeared. Gray looked at it carefully. This was a red fog beast that was 10 meters long. Its body was covered in scales, and it looked a bit like a crocodile. However, it had 3 horns on its head. The 3 horns were more than a meter long and shone with a red light. Apart from that, its body was covered in spikes, and each one was like a sharp blade. It looked extremely sharp. It's 10 meters long. In the shadows, Gray was slightly surprised. Along the way, the largest red fog beast he had encountered was the one that looked like a wild boar. Its battle strength was at the peak of level 1 of the Desolate level. This red fog beast that looked like a crocodile was 10 meters long. It was at least level 2 of the Desolate level. It might even be level 3 of the Desolate level. As for king-level blood beasts, Gray felt that it was unlikely. King-level blood beasts usually had a body length of more than 10 meters, and so on. The red mist beast was barely 10 meters in size, so it was unlikely that it had king-level battle prowess. I could try to kill it, but I'll have to ask Stanley Grinton to do it. Without using my ability to control corpses, I don't think I'm strong enough to kill it. After making up his mind, Gray stimulated the purple ring in his hand with a trace of blood force. Stanley Grinton was released from the purple ring. Under Gray's control, he quickly rushed toward the red fog beast that looked like a crocodile. Woo! This red fog beast that looked like a crocodile had very sharp senses and terrifying hearing. The moment Stanley Grinton rushed out, it had already detected him. Its huge body twisted, and its huge tail whipped. Pieces of rocks weighing tens of tons were sent flying, crashing towards Stanley Grinton. Whoosh! Stanley Grinton's king-level speed was displayed. He dodged left and right, avoiding the rocks that were flying toward him. He appeared beside the red fog beast. Pooh! As the blade slashed down, a long cut appeared on the crocodile-like red mist beast. Its huge body slid out horizontally, and many rocks were smashed by the red mist beast's huge body. It was like a huge bulldozer had pushed through, leaving a very wide slide mark on the ground. Stanley Grinton didn't stop there. He continued to rush toward the red fog beast. Woo! Just at this moment, the crocodile-like red mist beast roared. Then, the ground around the crocodile-like red mist beast seemed to have turned into a river. It surged up like a huge wave and rushed towards Stanley Grinton. The huge wave of earth and rocks rolled over, and Stanley Grinton slashed down with great force. The huge wave of earth and rocks was cut open, but Stanley Grinton was also knocked back by the impact. Third level of the desolate level. Gray, who was commanding Stanley Glinton from afar, immediately determined that the crocodile-like red mist beast strength had reached the third stage of the desolate grade from the exchange between Stanley Glinton and the red mist beast. I can kill it. Gray didn't order Stanley Grinton to retreat. He ordered Stanley Grinton to continue attacking the red fog beast. Although they were both at the third level of the desolate level, Stanley Grinton's speed was at the first level of the king level. Its defense was at the peak of the first level as well. It had a clear advantage. There was a chance that it could kill the red fog beast. He would rather kill a dozen average red mist beasts than kill this crocodile-like red mist beast. The stronger the red fog beast, the more powerful the red fog would be after its death. In comparison, the stronger the red fog beast, the more worthwhile it would be to kill it. The red fog beast that looked like a crocodile had already gotten up and glared angrily at Stanley Grinton. Walala! A large amount of mud turned into a river. It carried a force hundreds of times stronger than normal mudslides and hit Stanley Grinton. Bang! 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 Stanley Grinton's body rose into the air. With the king-level strength and speed, he could stay in the air. Stanley Grinton, who was in the air, dodged the mudslide and quickly ran to the top of the red fog beast's head. He fell from the sky and slashed down. Puff! A huge hole appeared on the back of the crocodile-like red mist beast. After being injured again, it became extremely angry. Its body shook violently, and Stanley Grinton, who was standing on its back, was immediately thrown away. It swung its tail and caught up with Stanley Glinton, who was sent flying. The spiked tail viciously slammed into Stanley Glinton's body. Crack! Stanley Glinton smashed into a huge boulder, causing the boulder to quickly collapse. However, he quickly rushed out of the rubble. His clothes were in tatters, but he was not injured. His metallized body allowed him to withstand the attack. Boom! 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 The battle between the two was extremely violent. Everything within a radius of several hundred meters was completely razed to the ground. Large chunks of mountain rocks were shattered, and craters appeared on the ground one after another. Gray did not go forward to support Stanley Grinton. Instead, he chose to command from afar. He barely reached the second level of the desolate level. His damage to the red fog beast was limited. Instead, he was likely to be injured by the aftermath of the battle. Therefore, he chose to command from afar. Roar! The battle lasted for half an hour. Finally, with an unwilling cry, the red fog beast's head was split open by Stanley Grinton. It was completely dead. Its huge body quickly shrank and dissipated, turning into a ball of fog the size of a soccer ball. The color of this ball of red fog was much deeper than the others. It was dark red and solid. Gray reached out to touch it. The red fog dissipated in Gray's hand, and an intense numbness spread throughout Gray's body. It was even more intense than when he took the blaze potion. After a while, the numbness disappeared from Gray's body. He could clearly feel that he had taken a big step toward the desolate level. The effect of this ball of red fog was several times stronger than all the previous ones combined. In the evening, the younger generation of the Four Kingdoms stopped hunting and looked for a safe place to rest. The younger generation of the Four Kingdoms really did come in. Niklos Blaze successfully met up with a young man from the Flame Kingdom and learned what had happened after he entered the island. He was not surprised that the younger generation of the Four Kingdoms could come in. After entering the island, he had a rough idea of the conditions to enter the island. But so what if they're all here? They can't use magic weapons. In terms of battle strength, I'm the strongest among the younger generation. No one can improve faster than me. His face was full of confidence. His strength had reached the second level of the desolate level. Among the younger generation of the Four Kingdoms, only Gray could barely contend with him by relying on defense. Gray's battle strength was not as good as his. He could rely on his powerful combat strength to hunt high-level fog beasts, but the other party couldn't. He believed that on this island, he would be the fastest to improve. Gray Fergus, this island will be your burial ground. Chapter 484. The next morning, the younger generation of the Four Kingdoms began to hunt the red mist beasts again. Of course, they were not only hunting the red mist beasts, but also the disciples of the enemy kingdoms. They might not even be hunting the red mist beasts, but being hunted by them. A young woman with purple hair carefully walked through the forest. She was a collateral descendant of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. As a descendant of the royal family, even if she was a collateral descendant, she still had access to a lot of cultivation resources. With such abundant cultivation resources, although her strength was not comparable to Francis, Sophia, and Hylia, she had reached the second level of the barbarian level and was not far from the desolation level. Yesterday's hunt had allowed her to touch the bottleneck of the desolation level. She felt that if she was lucky, she might be able to break through to the desolation level today. At that time, she would be comparable to the three most dazzling figures of the royal family's younger generation. Thinking of this, she could not help but feel a little excited. If she could show potential comparable to the three of them, the royal family would definitely put in more effort to cultivate her. It would not be impossible for her to become a king-level powerhouse in the future. Rustle. Suddenly, a giant tree next to her trembled violently. Then, a huge and ferocious snake head sprang out and opened its mouth to bite her. This was a misty python beast whose strength had reached the third level of the desolation level. She did not have time to resist before she was swallowed into its stomach. Before she died, she saw the trunk of the giant tree under the cover of the branches and leaves. The giant snake's body was wrapped around the trunk of the giant tree. The tree, which required a dozen people to wrap their arms around it, was twice as thick. One could imagine how huge this misty python beast was. Puff! The fierce battle that lasted half an hour ended with the sound of flesh being cut open. A blood beast that was 6 meters long fell. Its body quickly melted and turned into a cloud of concentrated red mist. Next to it, a descendant of the Crimson Kingdom's Duke family was panting heavily from the fierce battle, but his face was filled with excitement. He reached out to grab the red mist. At that moment, under the shadow of a tree not far from him, a figure suddenly sprang out and quickly passed by him. The moment they passed by each other, a pitch-black dagger slid across his neck. He looked at the red mist and fell to the ground with blood spurting out of his neck. The figure that passed by him turned around, revealing the face of a young man with a slightly gloomy expression. Trash! How could you take so long to kill a red fog beast at the second level of the Berserker realm? You made me wait for so long. Kicking away the corpse of the Crimson Kingdom's Duke family's disciple, the young man with a cold expression reached out to grab the red mist that originally belonged to the Crimson Kingdom's Duke family's disciple. There was still blood dripping on the mist. The red mist quickly melted after coming into contact with his hand, and waves of numbness spread throughout his body. A moment later, he stood up and licked his lips, preparing to look for his next target. He was a descendant of the Flame Kingdom's Duke Frank's family and cultivated the Shadow Blood arts. Compared to direct combat, he preferred assassination. Every time he succeeded in assassinating someone, he would feel an extreme sense of joy. Boom! At this moment, the sounds of battle entered his ears. He tilted his head to listen, and a cold smile appeared on his face. He quietly groped his way in that direction. His body was shrouded in a black shadow, and his footsteps silently shuttled between the shadows of the trees. After walking for a few hundred meters, he saw two parties fighting. On one side was an 8-meter-long red fog beast that looked like a giant ape, and on the other side was a black-haired young man. When he arrived, the battle was nearing its end. The red fog beast that looked like a giant ape had several deep wounds on its body. It was obviously heavily injured. Roar! The black-haired young man's long sword was covered in black mist, and he pierced the red fog beast's chest. The red fog beast let out an unwilling roar, and its body fell down heavily. It's him. Seeing this black-haired young man, his pupils shrank. Of course, he knew this black-haired young man, because he was definitely someone who needed to be wary of. Before entering the island, The king-level powerhouses of the royal family had warned them to run away immediately if they encountered this person. He glanced at the red mist that was left behind after the ape mist beast's death with a slightly greedy look. His figure merged into the shadows and slowly retreated. Facing this young man, he had no chance of winning. If it were someone else, he might have a chance to assassinate him. But with this young man's defense, his assassination would be completely useless. "Since you're here, stay." At this moment, a slightly cold voice suddenly sounded. He was shocked to find that the black-haired young man was looking in the direction he was hiding, as if he could see him in the shadows. "Oh no, he can see me." As if he was being stared at by a ferocious beast, the young man's hair stood on end. He could not care less about hiding, and quickly turned around to escape. Whoosh! At this moment, he suddenly felt a gust of wind beside him, and then he was shocked to find that a silver-masked man was blocking his way. "You, why are you on this island?" The young man looked as if he had seen a ghost, and his back was completely soaked in sweat. He also knew the silver-masked man in front of him, and he was more dangerous than the black-haired young man, because he could escape from a king-level blood beast, and his strength was at the 3rd level of the desolated level. But what he did not expect was that this person would appear on this island. Although he could not tell his age because he did not see his face, judging from his strength, he was definitely not young. Logically speaking, this person should not have been able to enter the island, but now he was here and seemed to be working together with the black-haired young man. The black-haired young man was already extremely difficult to deal with, and with the addition of this person, his heart was filled with despair. He stood still, not daring to move. He felt that if he made the slightest movement, he would be killed immediately. "You're from the Flame Kingdom." Gray stepped forward and looked at the cold-looking man. He had seen him in the Flame Kingdom's team. He could detect that someone was secretly spying on him through his infrared perception. Although he vaguely felt that this person was up to no good, he could not determine his identity, so he did not immediately ask Stanley Grinton to kill him. "Let me go. I can pay the price," the cold-looking man said, cold sweat running down his back. "No need. I'll take it myself. Everything you have is now mine." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, a large number of shadow tentacles spread out and attacked Gray and Stanley Grinton like countless giant vines. Meanwhile, the cold-looking man quickly retreated. He knew that Gray and the other person would not let him go. So he spoke to Gray to distract Gray and Stanley Grinton so that he could use his blood skill to escape. Poof! A silver-white sword light appeared, and the shadow tentacles that were strengthened by his blood skill were easily cut open. The silver-white broken sword kept enlarging in his eyes, and finally slid past his body. His body was cut into 2 diagonally from his shoulder to his abdomen, and the shadow ability that he had used collapsed with a loud bang. In the face of absolute power, his little tricks were useless. "Looks like at least 2 people have died in his hands." Gray walked forward and searched for the rune space bag on the man's body. He was surprised to find that the man had a total of 4 rune space bags on him. It was obvious that the man had killed at least 3 people before encountering him. It was just that he did not know which country those 3 unlucky fellows were from. After checking the contents of the 4 portals, he found that the total value of the items in the 4 portals was about 3 million gold coins. It was not a small gain, but that was all. After obtaining the secret treasure room of the Empire, Gray was now rich and did not care too much about this small amount of money. "I've reached the bottleneck of the desolate level." Touching the red mist with his hand and absorbing it, Gray found that his power had reached the bottleneck. Although he had absorbed the red mist, there was no increase. This was a sign that he had reached the bottleneck. "If I can kill a level 3 desolate level red mist beast, I should be able to break through the bottleneck quickly." Gray continued to hunt the red mist beasts. After walking for a few miles and killing a few red mist beasts that were only at the barbarian level, suddenly, crack, 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 the sound of trees collapsing could be heard. Out of caution, Gray hid. As the trees fell, a huge red mist beast appeared in front of him. It was a red mist beast that looked like a lizard. The mist had condensed into scales, and there were 3 triangular horns on its head. What really shocked Gray was that it was 15 meters long. This was the largest red mist beast he had ever seen. There really is a king-level red mist beast here. From this lizard-like red mist beast, Gray felt a great amount of pressure. He was almost certain that this red mist beast was comparable to a king-class beast. Even with the help of Stanley Grinton, he could not do whatever he wanted on this island. At the very least, this lizard-like red mist beast was not something he could fight against. Only after the lizard-like red mist beast had left did Gray walk out of the shadows. He looked in the direction that the lizard-like red mist beast had gone and chose another direction. After a few hours, roar! With a mournful roar, a tiger-shaped red mist beast that was 7 meters long fell to the ground. Its body quickly dissolved and turned into a cloud of dark red mist. Gray didn't know if it was because of the red mist beast that was as strong as a king, but the mist beasts Gray encountered along the way weren't that strong. The strongest one was the tiger-shaped red mist beast in front of him. Its strength was barely at level 2 desolation grade. Although I didn't encounter a third desolate level fog beast, I absorbed the red mist left behind by so many dead fog beasts. Adding this red mist left behind by a second desolate level fog beast, it should be enough for me to break through to the desolate level. With a look of anticipation, Gray reached out to touch the red mist. Chapter 485. The red mist dissipated in Gray's palm, and a numb feeling swept through Gray's body like a tide. It was transmitted to every part of Gray's body. Crack! Suddenly, Gray's body emitted a strange sound. It was as if some kind of limit had been broken, as if his life had evolved. His body was rapidly changing. Every inch of his skin, every inch of his flesh, and every piece of his bones were becoming stronger than before. Although there were not many changes to his body, every inch of his flesh and bones had become denser. The blood energy in his heart was also rapidly increasing. In just a short moment, it had increased by several times. A large amount of blood energy gathered in his heart and slowly rotated like a bloody whirlwind. His blood circulation had become extremely fast, rushing through his body like a tide. This was the source of a strange sound. After a long time, this change ended. Gray opened his eyes and felt the changes in his body. His eyes were filled with joy. I've reached the desolate level. Originally, he thought that even with the blaze potion, it would take at least a few months. After all, potions like the blaze potion that could increase one's strength couldn't be taken consecutively in a short period of time. There would be a long interval between each use. However, the red mist on this island had shortened this time. Not only could it increase his strength like the blaze potion, but most importantly, it did not have any side effects and could be continuously absorbed. The value of the red mist is even higher than the evolution herbs. At least for me, it is. Evolution herbs were used to evolve and increase the bloodline. For Gray, who had the ability to evolve and increase his bloodline through evolution, it was not very meaningful. However, the red mist was different. Although it could not increase his bloodline, it could increase his strength without any side effects. It could increase his strength quickly, which was what he needed most right now. It would be great if I could bring some back. Unfortunately, I can't. Gray wanted to bring some of the red mist back to Sarah, Bernal, and the others. Unfortunately, this red mist could not be stored in any container, nor could it be stored in a spatial item. Apart from absorbing it on the spot, there was no other way to take it away. Without staying any longer, Gray continued to hunt the red mist beasts. The opportunity to improve his strength was right in front of him. Wasting every minute and second was shameful. If it wasn't for the fact that he really needed to rest, he wouldn't even let go of the night. Poochie, after moving forward for several li, the ground beneath Gray's feet suddenly rumbled violently. Then, a huge sharp head emerged from the ground, revealing sharp fangs that were as large as hoes. It bit down on Gray. It had a sharp head, sharp teeth that were as large as hoes, and round, spherical eyes. This was a fog beast that looked like a mouse. Whoosh! In an instant, Gray was already more than 10 meters away, dodging the surprise attack. After reaching the desolated level, his speed had once again increased by a large margin. Now, his speed was not inferior to a level 2 desolated level blood warrior, which was why he was able to dodge the sneak attack just now. If it had been anyone else, even a desolate blood warrior, they would have been bitten in the sneak attack just now. Poochie, after the sneak attack failed, the rat-shaped fog beast burrowed back into the ground. The ground trembled slightly, and in the next moment, the ground beneath Gray's feet rumbled again. A huge head emerged from the ground again, biting down on Gray. This time, Gray, who was prepared, did not dodge. Clang! The sword at his waist was unsheathed. The earthy yellow sword flashed like a yellow light and slashed at the rat-shaped fog beast. He did not use any blood skills and only relied on his physical strength. However, now that Gray had reached the desolated level, his physical strength was not inferior to a level 2 desolated level blood warrior. Even if it was just his physical strength alone, his destructive power was enough to reach the desolated level. Puff! Under Gray's sword, a huge hole appeared on the rat-shaped fog beast body. Its body was pulled out from the ground. It was a 6-meter-long rat-shaped fog beast. However, it was completely bald. Not only its tail, but even its body was bald. There was not a single strand of hair on it. The injured rat-shaped fog beast was about to burrow back into the ground. Gray was about to use the black mist to kill the rat-shaped blood beast. However, at this moment, a trace of astonishment appeared on his face. However, he quickly recovered. Crackle! Dozens of huge metal blades with lightning appeared and pierced towards the rat-shaped fog beast from all directions. Puff! 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 Under the attack of the metal blades with lightning, the rat-shaped fog beast body shook violently for a while. Then it completely stopped moving. Its body turned into a cloud of red mist. Failed! Gray did not immediately absorb the red mist. There was a strange look on his face. At that moment, he wanted to use the triple mixed black mist ability, but he failed. In an emergency situation, he had to use the thunder metal ability to kill the rat-shaped fog beast. Is it because the gap between my wind abilities is too big, and I can't combine them? The only reason he could think of was that he had reached the desolated level, but his wind bloodline was only at the barbarian level. It only had the power of the barbarian level, and the gap between it and the other two abilities was too big. He tried to use the Ice Wind Blade ability, but it failed again. Just as I thought. The failure to use the Ice Wind Blade made him even more sure of his guess. The gap between the two abilities was too big, which led to the failure of combining them. I have to use the Storm Falcon Blood as soon as possible to be able to use the Ice Wind Blade and the Black Mist again. Gray had to use the Storm Falcon Blood as soon as possible to make up for the shortcoming of his Wind bloodline. Luckily, he had reached the desolated level, which was enough for him to use the blood again. I don't have to rush. It won't be too late to use it at night. After absorbing the red mist, Gray did not immediately find a place to use the Storm Falcon Blood. Instead, he continued to hunt the red fog beasts. Although he could not use the Ice Wind Blade and the Black Mist, his battle strength did not decrease because of this. His lightning metal ability, which had reached the second level of the desolated level, had already surpassed the power of the Black Mist, making his battle strength even stronger. Of course, the most important thing was that Stanley Grinton was there, so he did not have to worry about his safety. After killing several more red fog beasts, Gray finally stopped when it was already nighttime. He found a cave and finished his dinner. After asking Stanley Grinton to guard outside the cave, Gray took out the metal container containing the Storm Falcon Blood. The dark red blood was bright and glistening. Because it was well preserved, it did not show any signs of decay, even after 1,000 years. After taking out a portion, Gray drank it in one gulp. A knife-like pain appeared all over Gray's body. It was as if there were small wind blades cutting inside his body. The intense pain attacked Gray wave after wave. Outside his body, in the cave, a green whirlwind appeared and wrapped him up, placing him in the center of the whirlwind. Under the whirlwind, scratches appeared on the ground and walls of the cave. In a short time, the interior of the cave had been expanded by several meters due to the wind blades that Gray unconsciously released. A large movement spread out from the center of the cave. It was particularly clear in the silent night. Nearby, some nocturnal fog beasts' eyes flashed with cold light as they approached the cave. A cat-shaped fog beast moved between the trees, and came to a tree outside the cave. It saw Stanley Grinton, who was guarding outside the cave. The sharp claws on its legs stretched out, ready to kill this human. It then entered the cave to investigate the source of the sound. At this moment, Stanley Grinton, who was guarding outside the cave, raised his head and looked at the tree where the cat-shaped fog beast was. Pung! He took a step forward and used the air to get close to the tree. The broken sword at his waist was unsheathed, and the sword light flashed. Puff! The cat-shaped fog beast's body was cut in two and fell to the ground, turning into two clouds of red mist. Puff, puff, puff. One after another, the red fog beasts that came to peep or attack were all turned into red mist under Stanley Grinton's attack. Not a single red fog beast could get past Stanley Grinton's interception and enter the cave. Half an hour later, the blue wind around Gray dissipated, and the knife-like pain on Gray's body disappeared. However, he felt like he was soaked in sweat. This time, consuming the storm falcon's blood caused quite a commotion. Luckily, I have Stanley Grinton. Otherwise, I would have been in danger. Although he was in the process of transforming, Gray could still vaguely hear the sounds of fighting outside the cave. He knew that because he had consumed the storm falcon's blood, he had attracted a lot of nocturnal fog beasts. Of course, it was also because of Stanley Grinton that he dared to consume the blood on this island. Not a small harvest. Walking out of the cave, Gray saw that outside the cave, with the cave as the center, everything within a 100-meter radius had been turned into flat ground. Within this 100-meter radius, there were clouds of red mist on the ground. There were a total of 7 clouds. Although each cloud wasn't large in size, it was still a considerable harvest when all of them were added together. After absorbing all of the red mist, Yichin stayed in the cave for the night. The next morning, the ability to fly. Walking out of the cave, Gray's eyes were full of expectation. Whoosh! On both sides of his body, the power of blood gathered and spread out, eventually turning into a pair of 1-meter-long blue and black wings. On the wings, every feather was vivid and lifelike, as if they were real. Shwa! With a flap of his greenish-black wings, Gray soared into the air and quickly flew into the sky. Shwa! Shwa! In the sky, Gray rapidly changed his direction, rapidly ascending and descending. He was as agile as a bird. He did not need to feel around or train. It was as simple as controlling his own arm. Chapter 486. After experiencing the thrill of flying for a while, Gray finally descended from the sky and began his hunt for the day. Although he had mastered the ability to fly, and if he used it to search for fog beasts, he would be able to find suitable fog beasts faster and increase his strength faster. However, it was too dangerous. On this island, there were fog beasts that were as powerful as king-level beasts. If he encountered one, especially one that could fly, it would be very dangerous. Although he had Stanley Grinton's strength lay in his defense. His opponent could rely on his powerful defense to protect himself, but it would be very difficult for him to protect himself from the attacks of a king-level blood beast. If he encountered a king-level fog beast that used its ability to cover a large area of effect, he would not be able to get away with it. Looking at the white tower that was getting closer and closer, Gray carefully walked through the forest. Although the outside world was covered in ice and snow, this island was full of greenery. The temperature was just right, and green plants could be seen everywhere. Some of them were extremely huge, reaching hundreds of meters tall. It would take dozens of people to wrap their arms around them. Splash! After walking for a few miles, the sound of flowing water entered Gray's ears. There should be a river in front of him. After walking for a few hundred meters, a river indeed appeared in front of Gray's eyes. The river was 20 to 30 meters wide, and the current was quite rapid. Countless splashes of water were created, and a wave of coldness hit his face. Looking at the river, Gray stopped. Generally speaking, rivers were the places that blood beasts frequented the most. Gray did not know if fog beasts had such a habit, but he still became cautious. Rustle! Suddenly, the trees on Gray's left shook violently. A fog beast jumped out, revealing its sharp claws, and pounced toward Gray. It was a fog beast that was about 5 meters long. It looked like a wolf, but on its forelegs were a pair of bat-like wings. It flapped its wings in the air, reducing air resistance to the minimum. It quickly glided toward Gray. Whoosh! Just as the wolf-shaped fog beast was about to reach Gray, a cold blue tornado appeared in front of Gray. The ability to use the ice wind blade in the form of a tornado was obtained after it swallowed the Storm Falcon's blood. This should be the Storm Falcon's ability, but it was absorbed by him. Poof, poof, poof. The tornado that was filled with cold air was extremely fast. It crashed into the wolf-shaped fog beast and wrapped it up. The wolf-shaped fog beast was first frozen into an ice sculpture. Then it was cut by the tornado that looked like countless blades piled together. A large number of wounds appeared on his body, and he was sent flying, landing by the river. When he landed, there was no longer any movement, but his body quickly melted into a red mist. This fog beast was only at the second level of the Berserker level. Naturally, it was impossible for it to survive against the combination of ice and wind blades that had reached the second level of the Desolated level. Gray walked towards the red mist. Suddenly, his pupil shrank, and he quickly retreated. Splash! Just as he retreated, the river water suddenly splashed. From the river, a giant snakehead rushed out with a pair of ferocious vertical eyes and slammed into him. Bang! Mud flew everywhere, and the giant snakehead smashed into the place where he had been standing, creating a giant hole. After failing to attack Gray, the snake fog beast lifted its giant body. Half of its body was in the water, and the other half was in the air. It stared at Gray with cold eyes. This was a giant snake fog beast. Its body was twice as thick as an adult's waist. Gray did not doubt that this giant snake could swallow an adult in one bite. Just now, he had seen the snake's head through the river water, and that was why he was able to retreat in time. There's still one hiding. Gray was slightly surprised that the giant snake hadn't been drawn out by the fight just now. Instead, it had suddenly attacked him when he was walking to the river. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have been in the snake's belly. Let's test the power of the black mist. In front of Gray, the black mist appeared and spun, turning into a giant mist whirlpool. It was like an inverted tornado, crashing into the giant snake. As the attack came, the giant snake flicked its tongue, and a dangerous aura was emitted from its body. Splash! The river water spun violently and rose into the air, turning into a giant waterspout and crashing into the black mist. Boom! The black mist whirlpool and the waterspout collided. Both sides quickly collapsed, and the aftershock splashed out in all directions. The ground was full of holes, and a layer of mud at the center was forcefully scraped off. It's comparable to the third level of the Desolate level. Gray's expression was slightly grave as he looked at the giant snake that was propping up half of its body in the river. Now that it had reached the first level of the Desolate level, its power was comparable to the third level of the Desolate level. The fact that the giant snake's waterspout could block the black mist meant that it was comparable to the third level of the Desolate level. It's a water ability fog beast, and it's in the river. It's not easy to kill it. I wonder if I can lure it out of the river. Gray hurriedly retreated away from the river, as if he was afraid of the giant snake's power and was ready to escape. Hiss! Seeing that Gray was ready to escape, the giant snake flicked its tongue and crawled out of the river, chasing in the direction that Gray had retreated. The snake's body in the river was also exposed. The snake's body was more than 30 meters long, and it swam on the ground like a long rubber pipe transporting crude oil. Whoosh! The giant snake slid quickly towards Gray. Its huge body destroyed everything in its path, leaving a clear slide mark on the ground. I've lured it out. Seeing that the giant snake was far away from the river, Gray stopped retreating and rushed to attack the giant snake. Whoosh! The black mist turned into a giant black mist whirlpool, attacking the giant snake like a giant black pillar. The giant snake felt the danger. The water in the air condensed, turning into water pillars one after another, attacking the black mist whirlpool. But after leaving the river, the giant snake's water ability was significantly reduced. The water pillars attacking the black mist were all shattered by the black mist, and the black mist directly hit the giant snake. The giant snake slid to the side to dodge, but its tail was still swept by the black mist whirlpool. Many parts of its tail began to melt. Gotcha! The injured giant snake swung its tail. Giant trees were broken, and rocks were sent flying, all of them crashing towards Gray. In front of Gray, the mist turned into a long river, crushing all the giant trees and rocks, leaving a long trail. At this moment, the giant snake's head bit towards Gray from the other side. The snake's mouth opened exaggeratedly, enough to easily swallow Gray. Gray turned around and swept out his sword. Another long river of mist appeared, tens of meters wide. It submerged the giant snake, blocking it from pouncing on him. Meanwhile, he quickly retreated, distancing himself from the giant snake. Wrapped in the black mist, the giant snake struggled violently, but the power of the black mist was naturally very strong. After a while, the giant snake broke free from the black mist. At this time, the giant snake's body was full of traces of corrosion. The giant snake was enraged. A large amount of water vapor condensed into a waterspout to attack Gray, but it was blocked by the tornado formed by Gray's black fog. The aftershock hit the giant snake's body, causing it to tumble and fly backwards. Whoosh! After smashing many trees, the giant snake finally realized that the enemy was not to be trifled with. It gave up attacking Gray and twisted its huge body, shooting towards a river. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the huge snake. He held a broken saber and slashed out. Puff! A huge, hideous wound appeared on the giant snake's head, and the giant snake's body flew backward. After luring the giant snake out of the river, Gray had already ordered Stanley Grinton to circle behind the giant snake, blocking its path of retreat. Pung! The giant snake landed heavily. Before it could do anything, a long river of black mist appeared again, wrapping the giant snake in it. Chi-Chi! Under the joint efforts of Gray and Stanley Grinton, the third-level desolate grade giant snake's injuries continued to worsen, and it was finally completely slain. The giant snake's body stopped twisting, and its body quickly disintegrated. A ball of dark red, mist the size of a soccer ball, appeared in front of Gray. Although he had already killed a third desolate-level fog beast before, it was obviously easier this time. This was related to the giant snake's ability being weakened after leaving the river, and Gray's realm reaching the desolate level, and the storm falcon's blood he had swallowed. His battle strength was comparable to a third desolate level. This guy's battle strength is actually so strong. A few hundred meters away, on a branch of a giant tree, Lars Scarlet's eyes were filled with shock. After killing fog beasts for 2 consecutive days, his strength had reached the second desolate level. He was originally rather excited, but after seeing the battle just now, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. His opponent's strength had actually reached the third desolate level. Not only did the gap between them not close, it had even widened. And this person actually came in. Then, he looked at the silver-masked Stanley Grinton in shock. For him to be able to enter this island meant that he was not too old. He did not expect such a terrifying genius to be hidden in the Purple Moon Kingdom. Lars Scarlet. At this moment, Gray had already absorbed the red mist. He looked at Lars Scarlet, who was on a tree a few hundred meters away. He found me. Lars Scarlet's expression changed. His relationship with Gray could not be said to be good. Red wings appeared, and he did not care about alerting the fog beasts. He fled as fast as he could. He did not chase after Lars Scarlet. Although Gray had a conflict with him, it was not to the point of killing him. He looked ahead. A few hundred meters away, a giant steeple like a mountain appeared in front of him. Although he did not deliberately rush, 2 days was enough for him to reach this steeple. Let's take a look at this steeple first. Gray decided to stop hunting the red fog beasts and investigate the steeple first. After all, this was related to the method to leave this island. Moreover, this steeple was so mystical that he might be able to obtain some benefits from it. Chapter 487. The huge steeple was built with white stone. It was as big as a mountain magnificent and magnificent. There were many strange patterns carved on its surface. There were powerful exotic beasts with wings on their backs, mysterious circular altars, and all kinds of exquisitely shaped weapons. The entire building was shrouded in white light. Within the white light, there were golden lines. When he got close, a sacred and pure aura hit him in the face. It was as if he had arrived at the palace of the gods. It's really big. Looking at it from a close distance, Gray was even more shocked by the size of the steeple. It was as big as a mountain. This was not a metaphor, but a fact. It was as if an entire white stone mountain had been hollowed out and carved out. I wonder where the entrance is. After circling around the steeple for half a round, Gray saw a huge door. There were two huge doors that were 100 meters tall. On the left door, there was a huge blood beast that looked like a lizard. It had sharp horns on its head, a pair of wings on its back, and scales all over its body. Gray recognized this type of blood beast. To be precise, he had seen descriptions of this type of blood beast in books. This was the image of the legendary, divine-level blood beast dragon. On the right door, there was a huge, humanoid blood beast that stood upright. The blood beast was huge and covered in scales. There were a total of 3 eyes on its head. Among them, the third eye was located between the eyebrows. Different from the other 2 eyes, the third eye was vertical and looked extremely intimidating. Although he did not know the specific type of blood beast, from the image of the divine-level blood beast dragon on the left, he could guess that the blood beast on the right must be a divine-level blood beast as well. Gray stepped forward and came to the side of the huge door. He reached out and pushed the huge door, trying to open it. In the end, he used all his strength, but the huge door did not budge. It was as if what he was pushing was not a door, but a real mountain. He had Stanley Grinton give it another try, but he was unable to move it at all. He couldn't even leave a single mark on the huge door. It can't be opened. Gray raised his eyebrows. Even with Stanley Grinton's strength, he could not open this door. It was impossible to enter the steeple from this door. I wonder if there are other entrances. A pair of greenish-black wings sprouted from his back. Gray rose into the air and flew around the spire, trying to find the entrance to the spire. Unfortunately, Gray did not find any other entrance to the steeple even after circling it a few times, not even missing the upper part of the steeple. The entire spire was completely sealed, and no windows could be seen. Could it be that I'll be trapped on this island until I die? Gray's expression darkened slightly as he retracted the greenish-black wings made of the power of blood. According to his guess, the way to leave this island must be in this spire. But now, there was no way to enter the spire. Didn't that mean that there was no way to leave this island? Although there was a lot of food in his purple ring, and he could also find food on this island, he was unwilling to live on this island forever. Pa, pa, pa. At this moment, Gray heard footsteps approaching from behind. He turned around and saw a black-haired young woman walking over. The woman was tall, and her legs were especially slender. Her face was extremely delicate, and there was a red diamond-shaped gem between her eyebrows, adding a sense of mystery to her. "Your Highness Jelenway." Gray greeted her. "Have you found any entrances?" Jelenway Austin asked in a clear voice. She had arrived here half a day ago and tried to open the door, but to no avail. She simply chose to hunt magical beasts nearby, wanting to see if others had a way to open it. When she saw Gray flying around the steeple, she immediately rushed over, wanting to know if there was a way to enter. No, there are no other entrances in the entire steeple apart from this door. Gray shook his head with a bitter smile. Could it be that I'm really going to be trapped on this island until I die? Glenwy Austin frowned slightly. Perhaps the entrance hasn't met the requirements to open it. Thinking of how the white light appeared, Gray guessed. The two were not very close. After chatting and exchanging some information, they left. They were both people with strong wills. Although they seemed to be trapped on this island until they died, they would not lose their sense of propriety. After leaving the steeple, the two continued to hunt fog beasts. Although they did not know how to leave the steeple, it was definitely not wrong to increase their strength. Perhaps when they were strong enough, they would be able to open the door. Roar! An 8-meter-long tiger-shaped fog beast was wrapped in a whirlpool of black fog. It could not break free, and its body was constantly being melted. It kept crying out. Finally, with a shrill cry, the tiger-shaped fog beast completely stopped struggling. Its body quickly disintegrated and finally turned into a cloud of red fog. Gray stepped forward and absorbed the red mist. He could feel the improvement in his body and became excited. If this continued, he would be able to break through the first level of the Desolate Grade and reach the second level of the Desolate Grade in a few days. This island was indeed a treasure trove. It was a treasure trove for quickly increasing one's strength. Although he could not leave the island now, it was not wrong to increase his strength quickly. Gray randomly chose a direction and walked forward. After walking for more than 2 miles, Gray suddenly heard the sound of fighting. He quietly sneaked over and saw the 2 parties fighting. No, it should not be called a fight. It should be called a chase and an escape. In front of him, a man dressed in exquisite battle armor was running forward in a panic. He didn't know where he was going, and sometimes he even crashed into a tree, knocking it down. Behind him, a man with dazzling blonde hair was chasing him. The man was wearing a golden battle armor with exquisite patterns, and his face was like a cat playing with a mouse. Balls of golden flames appeared one after another and attacked the man in front of him. The man in front of him used his blood beast ability to resist and fled in panic. It's Warner Nahum. Seeing the man in front of him running away, Gray was slightly surprised. This man was Warner Nahum, a direct descendant of the Nahum family. He has reached the Desolate level. It seems that he has gained a lot in the past few days. Unfortunately, his luck is not very good. Gray smirked and looked at the blond young man chasing after Warner Nahum. This person was the second prince of the Inferno Empire, Niklos Blaze. Gray could not judge Niklos Blaze's current strength. After all, Niklos Blaze had not used his full strength, but he was definitely strong. Before entering the island, Niklos Blaze was already at the second level of the Desolate level, let alone after a few days. Warner Nahum was destined to be no match for Niklos Blaze. If not for the fact that Niklos Blaze did not intend to kill Warner Nahum immediately, Warner Nahum would have died long ago. Gray hid in the shadow of a tree and watched the chase with interest. Although he and Warner Nahum belonged to the Purple Moon Kingdom, he had no intention of saving him. Or rather, if he had met Warner Nahum first, he would have killed Warner Nahum first. Gray had long wanted to kill this descendant of the Nahum family who coveted his magical weapons and wanted to kill him. The reason why he did not do so was because he did not have the chance. Now that he was on the island, and the people of the Flame Kingdom were also there, he could kill him and blame it on the Flame Kingdom. It was the best opportunity to kill him. But now, it seemed that he did not need to do it. Someone would do it for him. Boom! After being hit by a golden fireball, Warner Nahum's back was torn open and he was sent flying. His back was char-black and he was badly injured. He could not get up immediately. Holding a golden spear, Niklos Blaze walked forward with a cold smile. The tip of the spear was pointed at Warner Nahum's heart. Don't kill me. You have a grudge against Gray Fergus, and I have a grudge against him too. I can help you kill him. With the spear pointed at his heart, Warner Nahum was terrified. That's a good suggestion, but unfortunately, you're too weak to help me. The corner of Niklos Blaze's mouth curled into a cold smile. Don't worry, he'll be with you soon. Golden flames wrapped around the golden spear. The spear pierced down and immediately burned through Warner Nahum's heart, leaving a huge hole in his heart. Warner Nahum's face was filled with fear. His struggling body went limp. You've barely reached the Desolated Grade. You think you're qualified to work with me? Niklos Blaze pulled out the spear and curled his lips with a look of disdain. If the other party was strong enough, he would not mind working with him to kill Gray Fergus. But unfortunately, with the other party's strength, he could not even injure Gray Fergus. What qualifications did he have to work with him? Gray Fergus. Thinking of Gray, his eyes flashed coldly. After spending 3 days, his strength had reached the third level of the Desolated Grade. He had a powerful attack that even Gray Fergus's defense could not withstand. Now, he only needed to find the other party. If he could find him, he believed that he would be able to kill him this time. The only thing that worried him was whether the other party's strength had also improved greatly. But when he thought of the other party's strong defense, his combat strength was far inferior to his, he was relieved. "Gray Fergus, you'll die when we meet," Nick Lowe sneered. With his strength, his speed of improvement would surpass the other party. The longer the time passed, the greater the gap between him and the other party. Moreover, the island was only so big. They would meet sooner or later, so he was not in a hurry. Chapter 488. Nicholas Blaze took the rune portal bag from Warner Nahum's corpse and glanced at it casually. He then put the rune portal bag into his pocket and chose a direction to continue hunting fog beasts. However, he didn't notice that a shadow was following behind him, quietly approaching him. This person was naturally Gray. The fastest way to kill someone who was not weak was, of course, a sneak attack. With the shadow ability, Gray could blend into the shadows. He decided to sneak attack as well. 80 meters, 60 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters. He was getting closer and closer to Nicholas Blaze. When he was only 30 meters away, he did not dare to go any closer. The stronger a person was, the sharper their senses. Nicholas Blaze's strength was naturally very strong. He might have even broken through to the third level of the desolate level. Gray felt that if he continued to approach, he might be discovered. Originally, if he followed Nicholas Blaze all the way and waited until nightfall to ambush him, the success rate would be higher. However, he could not give up on improving his strength and follow Nicholas Blaze for a day. In the end, Nicholas Blaze was not worth wasting a day to improve his strength. Whoosh! Staring at Nicholas Blaze in front of him, Gray suddenly jumped up and unsheathed his sword. A compressed black fog on the long sword turned into a black light and burst out, slashing at Nicholas Blaze. Not good. Sensing the attack coming from behind, Nicholas Blaze's expression changed, and he instinctively dodged to the side. However, the 30 meters distance was covered in the blink of an eye by the black fog. The black fog slashed at his back. Kacha, kacha! Under the huge impact of the black fog, Nicholas Blaze's body was sent flying. In the forest, trees were broken by him one after another. Some huge trees were even directly pierced through by him. After flying for a few hundred meters, he finally stopped. The black fog that had reached the third level of the desolate level was undoubtedly powerful. Whoosh! After releasing Stanley Grinton and letting Nicholas Blaze quickly attack Nicholas Blaze, Gray quickly rushed in the direction of Nicholas Blaze. Although the attack just now was powerful, it was impossible to kill Nicholas Blaze just like that. Whoosh! With Stanley Grinton's speed, the distance of a few hundred meters was covered in 1 or 2 seconds. Stanley Grinton appeared beside Nicholas Blaze, who was sent flying. He unsheathed his broken blade and slashed at Nicholas Blaze like a silver light. Bang! A massive explosion sounded out as a formless shockwave swept out in all directions. The surrounding trees were all struck by the shockwave, causing a large area to collapse. In the center of the shockwave, 2 figures retreated. One of the figures was holding a broken blade and wearing a silver mask. It was Stanley Grinton. The other figure had dazzling blonde hair and was holding a golden spear. Golden flames were entwined around the spear. It was Nicholas Blaze, who had just suffered a blow. Logically speaking, he should have been seriously injured. However, there were no wounds on his body at the moment. "You're on this island too." Nicholas Blaze looked at the silver-masked man in surprise. Being able to appear on this island meant that the other party was not too old. At least, he was not an old man in his 60s or 70s. He originally thought that he was the strongest on this island. He did not expect that the other party had also entered the island. "He's not injured." Gray rushed over and joined Stanley Grinton. He looked at Nicholas Blaze with surprise. After receiving his attack that was comparable to the third level of the desolate level, the other party did not show any signs of injury. Logically speaking, this should not be the case. The blood technique that the other party cultivated was obviously not one that specialized in defense. Your battle strength has also reached the third level of the desolate level. Seeing Gray rushing over, Nicholas Blaze realized that the one who had launched the sneak attack was Gray. His face turned ashen. The sneak attack just now was definitely at the third level of the desolate level. In other words, the other party's strength had also increased. The power of his blood fiends had also reached the third level of the desolate level. He had planned to kill the other party when they met, but he did not expect that the other party's battle strength had also reached the third level of the desolate level. Moreover, the other party had taken the initiative to attack and assassinate him. If it were not for the fact that his armor was made from the leather of a king-level blood fiend, he would have been seriously injured. One's battle strength is comparable to the third level of the desolate level, and the other's battle strength is comparable to that of a king-level blood fiend. They actually used a sneak attack to deal with me. They really think highly of me. Vigilance rose in his heart, but Nicholas Blaze looked at Gray and Stanley Grinton with ridicule on his face. We don't dare to underestimate the next successor of the Flame Kingdom. Gray glanced at Nicholas Blaze's undamaged armor and understood why Nicholas Blaze was not injured under the attack just now. Obviously, the armor on his opponent's body was made from the leather of a king-level blood fiend. Moreover, it was most likely made from the leather of a defensive-type king-level blood fiend. Aren't you afraid that the Flame Kingdom will take revenge on you for attacking me like this? Nicholas Blaze asked calmly as he was surrounded by the two of them. If I don't attack you, the Flame Kingdom won't assassinate me? Gray sneered in response. Nicholas Blaze did not answer. The answer was obvious. As long as they were on the opposing side and were certain to be a huge threat, the Flame Kingdom would not let them go. Swish! Nicholas Blaze made his move. Facing Gray and Gray's encirclement, he did not choose to escape. Instead, he chose to brazenly attack Gray. Golden flames wrapped around the golden spear and gushed out from the spear, turning into a huge golden flame claw that slammed toward Gray. At the same time, he held the golden spear in his hand and charged toward Gray at an extremely fast speed. As the golden flame claw slammed down, the black mist in front of Gray turned into a huge vortex that met the golden flame claw head-on. Puff! The black mist vortex collided with the golden flaming claw, and the stalemate lasted for a while. In the end, the black mist vortex was shattered by the golden flaming claw, and the golden flaming claw continued to attack Gray. Although the power of Gray's current black fog was not weaker than the ability of an ordinary third-level desolate-level blood fiend, the blood technique that Nicholas Blaze cultivated was an extremely powerful blood technique, even among special blood techniques. Its power was a notch stronger than ordinary special blood techniques. Swish! The black mist wrapped around the long sword and turned into a huge sword that was several meters long. Gray swung the sword and slashed at the golden flame claw. Bang! The golden flame claw was shattered, and the hurricane that followed after it shattered broke all the surrounding trees. Swish! At this moment, Nicholas Blaze had already appeared in front of Gray. He held a spear with golden flames wrapped around it and pierced it toward Gray. The speed he displayed during the process was far superior to those who cultivated special blood techniques at the same level. Speed was also a characteristic of the Flame Kingdom's blood techniques. The Golden Flame blood technique of the Flame Kingdom not only had the most outstanding power among special blood techniques, but it also had the ability to reach the top speed among special blood techniques. It was because of these 2 points that Nicholas Blaze was able to contend against Francis and a desolate-level blood fiend on his own. Blair Blaze was able to contend against 2 thrice-metamorphosed king-level experts from the Jewel Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom on his own. Whoosh! The golden spear was extremely fast and pierced toward Gray's chest. However, Gray was obviously not fighting alone. He still had Stanley Grinton, who was a powerful fighter. Moreover, his opponent's speed was definitely not slower than Nicholas Blaze's. In fact, he might even be faster. Swish! Stanley Grinton appeared at Nicholas Blaze's side and slashed at Nicholas Blaze's neck, which was not protected by his armor. Knowing that Nicholas Blaze's armor was tough, Gray ordered Stanley Grinton to attack his throat. Nicholas Blaze's expression changed. He turned his spear around and blocked Stanley Grinton's slash at his neck. At this moment, Gray, who was originally Nicholas Blaze's target, seized the opportunity and slashed at Nicholas Blaze's throat with his sword. Bang! Nicholas Blaze was sent flying. Large chunks of rock were crushed under his impact, leaving a clear trail on the ground. However, under Gray's attack, the opponent didn't suffer any serious injuries. Just a moment ago, the opponent dodged to the side, avoiding his throat, allowing Gray's sword to land on the opponent's armor. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as Nicholas Blaze got up from the ground, before he could even catch his breath, Gray and Stanley Grinton rushed forward again. Boom! Boom! Under the joint attack of Gray and Stanley Grinton, Nicholas Blaze was sent flying from time to time. Nicholas Blaze's blood technique could be said to be the strongest blood technique on this continent. Even the blood techniques of the three royal families of the Purple Moon Scarlet Gem could not compare. However, he was now facing two existences whose combat strength was comparable to the third level of the Desolate Grade. Both of them were extremely special. Gray had now reached the Desolate Grade. His combat strength was not inferior to the third level of the Desolate Grade. His defense had also soared to the third level of the Desolate Grade. Stanley Grinton, on the other hand, was once a King stage expert. His speed was definitely not inferior to Nicholas Blaze's. He might even be faster. In terms of defense, he was so strong that Nicholas Blaze's attack could hardly injure him. Nicholas Blaze, who had just broken through to the third level of the Desolate Grade, was definitely no match for the two of them. Puff! Gray's sword slashed his chest again. Nicholas Blaze was sent flying and spat out a mouthful of blood. Although the armor on his body had a strong defense, it couldn't block all of the power. Some of the impact would inevitably enter his body. After being hit repeatedly, the injuries on his body became more and more serious. He was finally seriously injured and spat out blood. Chapter 489. To think that I would be forced into such a situation, leaning his spear on the ground. Nicholas Blaze had traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were full of seriousness. He had not expected to be forced into such a situation. After attacking Gray Fergus and failing to kill him first, he turned around and fled without hesitation. However, although he was extremely fast, the man in the silver mask was even faster. Every time he tried to escape, he was intercepted by the other party. Under the siege of the two, even though he was wearing armor made of king-level blood fiend leather, the injuries on his body could not help but become more and more serious. Whoosh! Gray and Stanley Grinton approached Nicholas Blaze from both sides with murderous intent in their eyes. With a sweep of his long sword, a black mist swept out toward Nicholas Blaze. Bang! Nicholas Blaze pointed his spear and dispersed the black mist. Then, flames spurted out from his spear and turned into a huge golden flame claw that slammed toward Gray. If not for the fact that this island restricts the use of magic weapons, I would never have been forced into such a situation, Nicholas Blaze said in a deep voice. Crack! First, the black mist vortex weakened the giant flame claw, and then the black greatsword shattered the giant flame palm. Gray sneered as he rushed toward Nicholas Blaze. Is there any use in saying this? Nicholas Blaze should have a silver-level magic weapon on him. Indeed, if silver-level magic weapons could be used, even if he joined forces with Stanley Grinton, they would have almost no chance of winning. It would be better to say that he would be in extreme danger. However, there were no ifs in this world. Magic weapons, indeed, could not exert the power they should have. It was meaningless to make such a false assumption. It is indeed useless. Nicholas Blaze nodded and then shook his head. He looked at Gray and sneered. This island can prevent the effects of magic weapons. But do you think that this island can prevent the effects of magic potions? At this moment, a metallic potion bottle appeared in his hand. He unscrewed the cork and poured the potion into his mouth. Not good. Gray's expression changed. He ordered Stanley Grinton to charge at Nicholas Blaze while he swept his sword at Nicholas Blaze. Puff! Two deep ravines appeared where Nicholas Blaze was. One of them was created by Gray's black mist, while the other was created by Stanley Grinton's blade. However, these two attacks failed to hit Nicholas Blaze. Just before their attacks landed, a yellow halo suddenly appeared around Nicholas Blaze's body. Then, they saw Nicholas Blaze's body quickly sink and disappear into the ground. As expected of the successor of the Flame Kingdom, not only does he have a silver-grade magic weapon, he even has an incredible potion that gives people the ability to escape through the earth. Gray frowned as he stood in the forest that had been destroyed by the battle. Although he knew that it would be difficult to kill Nicholas Blaze as the successor of the Flame Kingdom, the other party must have a lot of life-saving means. However, he didn't expect him to have so many life-saving means. Not only did he have a silver-grade magic weapon, but he also had a potion that gave people the ability to use the earth element. Before this, he didn't know that such a potion existed. What kind of potion is this? It can actually give people extra abilities? Gray's face was full of doubts. This is an ability potion. It's a type of magic potion during the Empire. The potion's formula has been lost. A man's voice sounded. Along with the voice, a young man and two young women walked over. The young man was wearing a yellow battle suit. He had a head of purple hair and a handsome and sunny appearance. It was Francis. The two women also had purple hair and wore women's battle attire. Their waists appeared especially slender, and they were the sisters, Hilya and Sophia. The three of them should have heard the battle and rushed over. The battle between Gray and Nicholas Blaze was so loud that it could be heard even from miles away. What was certain was that there were more than 3 people who had heard the battle and rushed over. It was just that the 3 of them had a good relationship with Gray and walked out. The others were afraid and chose to retreat. Ability Potion. This name is really appropriate. Gray nodded to the 3 of them. This is a potion that allows people to temporarily use abilities they don't have. However, it has a time limit and can't be used for long. Sophia explained. It's really only temporary. Gray had expected that the abilities gained from this potion would only be effective for a short period of time. If this potion could be used continuously, the other party wouldn't have taken it in a moment of crisis. Moreover, it was impossible to give people permanent abilities outside of the bloodline implantation. The foundation of abilities was the bloodline. Aside from the bloodline, abilities couldn't last forever unless they were temporarily possessed. Gray, have you investigated the spire? Hilya asked. I have. There's only one entrance to the spire, but it's closed. Gray told her what he knew. There's no way to open it? Doesn't that mean we'll be trapped on this island until we die? Hilya frowned. It shouldn't be. Sophia shook her head and said, from the characteristics of this island, it must be a trial ground of a force more powerful than the Empire. Since it's a trial ground, it certainly won't trap people here until they die. It can't be open now. I'm afraid it hasn't met the conditions to open it. Conditions to open it? Francis rested his chin on one hand. What do you think the conditions to open it are? It might be time. Gray voiced his guess. Time? That's very likely. Judging from the activation of the teleportation beam, this island should be operating according to a certain pattern. Hilya's expression changed slightly. In the end, the 4 of them didn't move together. Instead, they scattered and hunted mist beasts on their own. The 4 of them moving together had a great guarantee of safety. As long as they didn't encounter a king-level mist beast, nothing could threaten them. However, this was bound to slow down each other's improvement. After all, the 4 of them hunting mist beasts together was certainly not as fast as the 4 of them splitting up. More than 10 miles away, in a mountain forest, Nicholas Blaze, whose whole body was covered in yellow light, drilled out of the ground. His face was pale, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked slightly battered. I was actually forced to waste a precious ability potion to escape. Even on the battlefield with the Purple Moon Kingdom, when he fought against Francis and a desolate-level blood beast alone, he had never been so battered. It was partly because of the strength of Gray and the Silver-Masked Man, and partly because this island restricted the use of magic weapons. In his hands, not only did he have a silver-level magic weapon, but he also had a magic weapon that could be used quickly. Unfortunately, due to the uniqueness of this island, there was no way to use it. How can Gray and Fergus improve so quickly? Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. After consuming a bottle of high-grade healing potion, Nicholas Blaze's body was recovering quickly. He was deep in thought. With Gravergis's battle prowess, he should be able to kill a first-level desolate-level fog beast at most. Logically speaking, someone who could only kill first-level desolate-level fog beasts shouldn't be able to improve so quickly. However, their speed of improvement wasn't any slower than his. His realm had risen to the third level of the desolate level, and so had his realm. His combat strength was comparable to a third-level desolate level. His speed of improvement was almost the same as his. It's because the silver-masked man gave him the mist beast he killed. Nicholas Blaze's voice was slightly shocked. He was shocked by his own conclusion. There was actually someone who would give the opportunity to improve their strength to others, no matter how he thought about it. It was extremely inconceivable. However, this was the only conclusion that could explain the rapid improvement of his strength. Under normal circumstances, a person would never give the opportunity to improve their strength to others. But what if it's not normal circumstances? He narrowed his eyes. Thinking about the information he had obtained on the other party, he already had a guess. A few days later, it had been almost a week since Gray and the others had entered the island. Screech, in the sky, a bird-shaped mist beast with a wingspan of more than 10 meters let out a mournful cry. Its voice was filled with anger. This was a third-level, desolate-level mist beast. It was a mist beast that was second only to a king-level mist beast. With its third-level, desolate-level strength and the ability to fly, few enemies dared to provoke it. A few days ago, it had even killed a human. However, it had now met its nemesis. Puff! Gray slashed out a compressed black mist with his sword. It turned into a black light and slashed the bird-shaped mist beast, leaving a deep gash on its body. The bird-shaped fog beast stabilized its body with great difficulty and tried to escape in panic. But at this moment, Stanley Grinton, who was holding the broken sword, burst forth with a speed even faster than the bird-shaped fog beast. He intercepted the bird-shaped fog beast in front of him and slashed it to the ground with one strike. Puff, puff, puff! Under the joint attack of Gray and Stanley Grinton, the bird-shaped mist beast finally died and turned into a cloud of thick red mist. Gray stepped forward and absorbed it. In a few days, Gray's level had increased rapidly. He was now close to second-level desolate level. Midway, he swallowed another blood beast's blood. This time, he chose the blood of the dark ape. Now, other than controlling Stanley Grinton, he could also control other things. He controlled the King Kong ape, which had not yet matured. Once again, he obtained a third-level desolate level power. He was ready to continue hunting mist beasts. Suddenly, whoosh, a dazzling white light flashed across the sky and quickly spread into the distance. It eventually swept across the entire island. Gray looked up and saw that in the center of the island, there was a tall steeple that was like a mountain. It was emitting white halos, which were beautiful and filled with a sacred aura. Chapter 490. Could it be that the entrance to the steeple has opened? Seeing the steeple change again after emitting the guiding beam a week ago, Gray's expression changed slightly as he had a guess. According to his discussion with Sophia and the others, the steeple and even the island were operating according to a certain pattern. The guiding beam would open at a certain time to allow people of suitable age to enter the island for the trial. Then, the entrance to the steeple would open at a certain time to allow the participants to leave the island. Now that the white steeple had changed again, he couldn't help but suspect that the entrance to the steeple had opened and that it was time to leave the island. Giving up on hunting fog beasts, Gray rushed towards the steeple. Although increasing his strength was important, leaving the island was even more important. If he missed the opportunity and was trapped on the island, it would be useless no matter how strong he was. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While Gray was rushing towards the minaret on the island, the people who were still alive from the 4 great kingdoms all had slight changes in their expressions. They did not hesitate to give up on hunting fog beasts and rushed towards the minaret. The people who appeared here were all geniuses of the younger generation from the 4 kingdoms. If Gray and the others could think of the problem, they could naturally think of it and guess what the flickering of the steeple meant. We can't let Gray Fergus reach the entrance of the steeple first. Among them, Nicholas Blaze increased his speed to the limit and rushed towards the steeple as fast as he could. If Grey Fergus blocked the entrance of the steeple, he would probably be trapped on the island forever. This was something he absolutely didn't want to happen. Whoosh! When Grey arrived at the steeple, there were already more than 10 people near the entrance of the steeple. In order to hunt strong enough fog beasts, Grey had been searching all over the island for the past few days. He was quite far from the steeple, so even though his speed was not slow, he was still not the first to arrive. As for blocking Nicholas Blaze and trapping Nicholas Blaze on the island, he didn't mind doing so if he had the chance, but he definitely wouldn't give up the opportunity to increase his strength. It's already opened. Arriving near the entrance of the spire, Grey looked at the entrance and immediately saw that the two huge doors that he could not open no matter how hard he tried had already opened inwards. Obviously, his previous guess was right. The entrance to the spire would open at a certain time, and now was the time. He walked forward and saw that among the dozen or so people at the entrance, there were Sophia, Francis, and others. There were also people like Glenn Austin from the Jewel Kingdom and Lars Scarlet from the Scarlet Kingdom. More than a dozen people stood near the entrance, but did not enter immediately. After the door opened, what they saw was not the internal space of the spire, but a pitch-black vortex. It was similar to the black fog vortex that he used to attack, but its color was deeper. It was as black as ink, and not a single bit of light could be seen from it. This is... Grey stepped forward and asked Sophia. It should be a channel with teleportation abilities. Teleportation channel? Yes. Just now, Nicholas Blaze and a few people from the Flame Kingdom entered and immediately disappeared. They should have been teleported away. Sophia nodded. What do you think they'll be teleported to? Jelenway Austin asked. There are only two places, either somewhere in the spire or outside the island. This island should be the trial ground of some mysterious force. The teleportation process should not be dangerous. Lars Scarlet said. Nicholas Blaze has already entered. Let's go, we should go in too. If we miss it, we might be left on the island forever. Francis said as he stepped into the black vortex. Then, his figure quickly disappeared into the black vortex. Following Francis, one person after another walked into the whirlpool and soon disappeared without a trace. Let's go. Nodding to Sophia, Grey also stepped into the vortex. After entering the vortex, everything before his eyes was pitch black. Even with night vision, Grey could not see anything. However, the darkness quickly passed. Soon, his eyes became bright again and his vision was restored. He looked around and found himself in a spacious sealed room. This room was about a few thousand square meters. There was no light source in the room, but surprisingly, the room was as bright as day. This was a phenomenon that defied common sense, but Grey accepted it easily. After all, even magical weapons could be banned, so it wasn't that hard to understand why there would be light in a closed room without any illumination. Suddenly, a red mist appeared in the room. Then, in the air, it condensed into a line of words. Trial Tower, first level of trial. It was not a language that Grey did not recognize. It was a language that Grey was very familiar with. It was a language that had been used since the time of the Empire. The force that left behind this island used the same language as the Empire. There should be some kind of connection between the two. The Trial Tower should be referring to the White Spire. Then, what is the first level of trial? Just as Grey was thinking about this, there was another change in the space. More red mist appeared and condensed together. It twisted and changed shape. Finally, the red mist condensed into a person. This person was about 2 meters tall. Because he was condensed from mist, his face was rather blurry. In his hand, he held a broadsword. The broadsword was quite wide. Whoosh! The person condensed from mist quickly pounced on Grey. As he approached, the broadsword shone with an earthy yellow light and became even larger. He slashed down at Grey from above. Clang! Without using his Blood Fiend ability, Grey was able to block this powerful strike with just his physical strength by unsheathing his sword. Clang, 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 puff. The weapons in their hands collided rapidly. After more than 10 exchanges, Grey exploded with terrifying speed and suddenly appeared beside the mist person. The sword in his hand fiercely slashed at the waist of the mist person. The mist person quickly retreated to the side. However, he was unable to dodge the sword. A deep wound appeared on his waist. His combat strength should be at level 1 of the desolation level. Gray judged in his heart. In the previous exchange, he did not use the Blood Fiend ability. He only relied on his physical strength. However, because of the King Beast bloodline, his physical strength was comparable to a level 1 Desolation level Blood Warrior. Therefore, his opponent's combat strength should be at level 1 of the Desolation level. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The mist person attacked Gray again. This time he slashed in the air. Suddenly, 3 several-meter-long rock blades slashed at Gray. Facing the 3 rock blades, Gray did not intend to be entangled with his opponent. He wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. What happened just now was just to test his opponent's combat strength. Whoosh! In front of Gray, a long river of green fog appeared, and the 3 stone blades were shattered. Not only that, but the long river of green fog also wrapped around the person formed by the fog. Puff, puff, puff. The man formed by the fog struggled madly, but he was unable to break free. Wounds appeared on his body one after another. When the river of fog disappeared, the man was lying on the ground, motionless. His body rapidly melted away until nothing was left behind. There's no red mist? Seeing this, Gray understood. It seemed that the mist creatures in the trial tower would not leave behind red mist when they died. Red mist appeared in the middle of the room again, forming a few more words. Tower of Trials, second trial. Then, the red mist in the room surged and turned into another person. This was a slightly thin person. He was only about 7 meters tall and held 2 short knives in his hands. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Behind the opponent, shadows spread out, and the shadows turned into giant arrows one after another, shooting towards Gray in a dense pack. The ice wind blade turned into a whirlpool and immediately blocked the arrows one by one. Level 2 of the Desolation level. The mist person in front of him was obviously 1 level higher than the previous one. It had reached level 2 of the Desolation level. Whoosh! After using the shadow ability to turn into arrows and attack Gray, the mist person quickly closed in on Gray, showing extreme speed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In front of Gray, black mist surged out and turned into tentacles that attacked the mist person. Puff! After dodging more than 10 shadow tentacles, the mist person was stabbed by a black mist tentacle. A hole appeared on his body. The mist person holding 2 knives fell down powerlessly and disappeared completely. First level Desolation, level 1, then level 2. Next is probably level 3. The red mist words appeared again, and the 3rd trial began. A mist person holding a long spear appeared. The mist person holding the long spear attacked Gray. A huge green tornado appeared. It was like a huge green blade had gathered and spun towards Gray. In front of Gray, the black mist also turned into a tornado and hit the green tornado. Boom! Fragments of the wind blades and sporadic black mist sputtered in all directions. It really reached level 3 of the Desolation level. In the aftermath, Gray and the mist person holding the long spear attacked again. Gray swept out his sword. The condensed black mist turned into a black light and slashed at the mist person holding the long spear. The tip of the spear person's long spear flashed with a green light. It was filled with an extremely sharp aura. It was the compressed wind. The spear touched the black light, and the black light was shattered. The mist person holding the spear quickly approached Gray. The spear with green light was aimed at Gray's heart. Gray's long sword was filled with black mist. It turned into a few meters long and slashed out. Chapter 491. Boom! The spear and the black greatsword collided. With the collision as the center, a terrifying shockwave was released. If they were in the outside world, hundreds of meters around them would have been razed to the ground. However, in this space, other than the violent movements, there was nothing else. It was unknown what material the room was made of. Even under such a powerful shockwave, there was no damage at all. Boom, boom, boom. The spear and the black greatsword continued to collide. Wave after wave of shockwaves spread in all directions. The room was filled with terrifying waves. Gray was at a disadvantage. Gray, who was in the first level of the Desolate level, had the King Kong, King Beast bloodline. His speed should be at the second level of the Desolate level, while the spear-wielding mist figure was at the third level of the Desolate level. Relying on their greater speed, the spear-wielding mist men would occasionally attack Gray from all sorts of tricky angles, and Gray was at a disadvantage. Whoosh! After more than 10 exchanges, the spear-wielding mist figure finally found an opportunity. Before Gray could block it, it swiftly stabbed its spear at Gray's heart. Although it was formed by mist, its battle skills were no worse than a third-level Desolate level being. It was able to grasp the opportunity very quickly. Puff! Gray and the spear-wielding mist figure were both pushed back. A sharp wound appeared on Gray's chest. However, it was not serious. His strong defense allowed him to withstand the attack of the third level of the Desolate level without too much damage. On the other side, a deep wound appeared on the shoulder of the spear-wielding mist figure. There was no time to withdraw his sword to block the spear-wielding mist figure's attack. Gray made a decision at this moment. The black greatsword slashed at the spear-wielding mist figure. When the spear was about to stab him, the black greatsword slashed at the spear-wielding mist figure. The power of the two attacks was about the same. They were both at the third level of the Desolate level. However, the spear-wielding mist figure did not have as strong a defense as Gray. It was immediately injured by Gray's attack. Whoosh! The spear-wielding misty figure once again pounced towards Gray. Gray was naturally not afraid, and similarly pounced towards the spear-wielding misty figure. Puff! Relying on his powerful defense and paying the price of several light injuries, Gray finally seized the opportunity and chopped off the spear-wielding fogman's head, completely ending its life. Taking a deep breath, Gray touched the ground with his sword and waited for the next trial to begin. The fog text for the fourth trial appeared, and a large amount of red fog surged within the room. Following this, 3 fog people appeared before Gray. One of them was holding a long sword, and his figure was rather thin and tall. One of them was holding a long saber and had a medium build. One of them was holding a battle axe, and his body was tall and sturdy. Whoosh! The fogman with the long blade took the initiative to attack Gray. With a slash of its long blade, the blue flames turned into a long river and rushed towards Gray. Boom! A long river of black mist appeared in front of Gray, blocking the river of red flames that was surging towards him. At this moment, the sword-wielding misty figure had already approached Gray and appeared beside him. Purple lightning surged on its long sword as it swept towards Gray. Boom! Gray's long sword surged with black fog and blocked the sword. However, at this moment, the battle axe filled with cold air appeared. Gray could not block it in time and was immediately hit by the axe. Bang! Gray flew backwards, and in the process, his entire body was frozen by the cold. He turned into an ice sculpture and landed heavily on the ground. Chi-chi! Black fog appeared and wrapped around his body, melting the cold ice. Gray's figure reappeared. Looking at the wound left by the axe, it was not too deep. The 3 fog people were all at the third level of the Desolate level. With his defense, it would be difficult for the 3 fog people to seriously injure him. However, in a 1 versus 3 situation, it was certain that he would not be able to fight back. You want to see who has more people? Gray raised his eyebrows. After coming to this island, he had always been the one ganging up on others. He had never been ganged up on. Swoosh, swoosh. Touching the purple ring, 2 figures appeared beside Gray. One of the figures wore a silver mask and had a saber at his waist. It was Stanley Grinton. The other figure was 9 meters tall and covered in golden scales. There was a long horn on his forehead and a huge eye under the horn. This was a blood beast with only 1 eye. It was the King Kong King Beast. Although it was not an adult, it was already at the third level of the Desolate level. Back then, Gray teamed up with a third-level Desolate level elite and spent a few hours to kill it. Swoosh, swoosh. The sword-wielding Misty figure and the battle-axe-wielding Misty figure rushed over. At this moment, Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast moved. Stanley Grinton was a King Tier elite when he was alive and had the speed of a King Tier elite. Although the King Kong King Beast was not an adult, its speed was not inferior to a King Tier elite. Whoosh! Stanley Grinton slashed at the sword-wielding misty figure with his saber. Boom! The King Kong King Beast punched the battle-axe-wielding misty figure with its giant fist. Boom, boom. The two sides quickly exchanged blows. Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast clearly had the upper hand. Whether it was speed or defense, Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast were stronger than the sword-wielding and axe-wielding misty figures, especially their defense, which had already reached the level of a King Tier defense. After being strengthened by metallization, it was even more terrifying. Facing the sword-wielding misty figure and the battle-axe-wielding misty figure, Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast did not even need to defend. This was because the attacks of the sword-wielding misty figure and the battle-axe-wielding misty figure could not leave any injuries on their bodies. On the other side, Gray and the sword-wielding misty figure were also engaged in a fierce battle. However, the first to end the battle was not him, but Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast. In terms of combat power, these two were above Gray. Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast ended their battle almost at the same time. Stanley Grinton slashed with his saber, almost splitting the sword-wielding misty figure's body, killing the sword-wielding misty figure. The King Kong King Beast punched down, and the axe-wielding misty figure was almost flattened. Its atomized body quickly dissipated. Then, facing the joint attack of Gray, Stanley Grinton, and the King Kong King Beast, the sword-wielding misty figure was naturally unable to resist and was quickly killed. I wonder what's next. This level of the trial was even easier than the previous one. With Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast, they were his strongest combat power. Moreover, this combat power had not been developed to its limit. Based on the number of corpse-haired apes he could control, with the bloodline of the gloomy ape, he should be able to control 20 desolate-level blood fiends. If he were to control king-level blood fiends, he should be able to control 4. Currently, he could only control 1 king-level blood fiend and 1 desolate-level blood fiend. This was far from his current limit. Fifth trial of the Tower of Trials. The words in the fog appeared again. A large amount of fog gathered, and finally, a sword-wielding misty figure appeared in front of Gray. It's just one person. Could it be? Seeing that only one misty figure had appeared, Gray's expression turned serious. The trials in the trial tower were bound to become more difficult as one progressed. This time, only one person had appeared. This meant that this person's combat power was far greater than the combined power of the other 3. The previous 3 misty figures had been at the 3rd level of the desolate level. They were stronger than the other 3 misty figures. He could not help but suspect that this misty figure was at least king level. Gray did not rush forward. Instead, he ordered Stanley Grinton and the King Beast to pounce on the misty figure. There was an absolute gap between him and a king level. If he were to be hit by a king level attack, even with his current defense, he would definitely be severely injured. However, Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast were different. After metallization, it would not be difficult for them to withstand a king-level attack. Even a first-level king-level attack will be difficult to injure. Boom! The King Kong King Beast pounced on the misty figure. Its giant, meteorite-like fist smashed down on the misty figure. The misty figure's sword suddenly shone with a golden light. It transformed into a giant sword that was several meters long. It slashed down on the King Kong King Beast's fist. Boom! The two collided, creating a terrifying sound. The King Kong King Beast's giant body was forced back more than 10 steps. On the other side, Stanley Grinton's broken sword slashed down. The misty figure wielding the long sword swept its golden giant sword horizontally, forcing Stanley Grinton to retreat. Its combat power is stronger than Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast, but it seems Gray was slightly confused. The misty figure was indeed very strong. It was stronger than Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast. However, it did not seem like a king-level existence. Compared to a king-level existence, the misty figure's combat power was obviously weaker. Boom, boom. Stanley Grinton and the King Kong King Beast were still fighting with the misty figure. Although the two of them were not as strong as the misty figure, they were one man and one beast working together. On the other hand, the misty figure was alone. They were definitely not weaker than the misty figure. Gray also stepped forward to join the battle. Since it was not a king-level existence, it could still fight. Poof! Faced with Gray, Stanley Grinton, and the King Kong King Beast siege, the misty figure was overwhelmed. Gray's black giant sword slashed down, leaving a wound on the misty figure's body. However, the wound was not serious. It could only be considered a minor injury. This misty figure imitates an existence whose speed, strength, defense, and blood fiends have all reached the peak of the third level of the desolate level. As the battle continued, Gray saw some clues. This misty figure was indeed not a king-level existence. However, it could be considered the strongest below the king level. Its speed, strength, defense, and blood fiends had all reached the peak of the third level of the desolate level. If it was a one-on-one battle, neither Stanley Grinton nor the King Kong King Beast would be a match for it. Of course, the misty figure could not do anything to Stanley Grinton or the King Kong King Beast. After all, their defense had reached the peak of the first level of the king level. The misty figure's attack power could not do anything to them. After fighting for more than 10 minutes, the misty figure's body was covered in wounds. Although none of the wounds were serious, the misty figure's injuries were not light. If the battle continued like this, victory would definitely belong to Gray. However, at this moment, a terrifying destructive force suddenly erupted from the misty figure. Boom! A giant metal sword that was dozens of meters long suddenly appeared and collided with the King Kong King Beast body. The King Kong King Beast was sent flying by the giant sword and smashed into the wall of the room. A clear wound appeared where the golden giant sword had pierced. Even the powerful King Kong King Beast was injured by this sword. Chapter 492. This power. Looking at the King Beast's injuries, Gray was shocked. On the King Beast's chest, a wound that was a few meters long could be clearly seen. Although it was only a minor injury compared to the King Beast's huge body, it was still an injury. The King Kong Beast King's defense, in addition to its metallization, was enough to reach the peak of the first level of the desolation grade. Even so, it was still injured under such circumstances. One could only imagine how powerful the giant golden sword formed by the mist figure was. It's definitely at the king level. He was sure that the attack just now had definitely reached the king level. Only a king level attack could injure the King Beast. Blood skill. Gray's expression was grave. The Fogman in front of him definitely had a blood skill. Judging from the previous battle, the Fogman's combat power had not reached the king level. However, the giant golden sword just now was definitely at the king level. There were not many ways to make a non-king level being have the combat power of a king level being. The only way was to use a silver grade magic weapon, some magic potions that could stimulate one's potential, and a blood skill. The Fogman was completely condensed from red fog. Naturally, it did not have any magic weapons or the corresponding magic potions. The only possibility was that the Fogman had been given a blood skill during the condensation process. The Fogman had a blood skill. At this moment, something that shocked Gray even more happened. Whoosh! In the room, a giant golden sword that was dozens of meters long appeared again, emitting a hair-raising aura. It was aimed at Gray and Stanley Grinton. Not good. Ordering Stanley Grinton to face the giant sword, Gray quickly retreated. Bang! After receiving Gray's order, Stanley Grinton rushed out and slashed at the giant sword. Compared to the giant sword that was dozens of meters long, he was as small as an ant. It felt like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. As expected, Stanley Grinton, who collided with the giant sword, was injured and flew backward like a cannonball. Moreover, a terrifying shockwave swept towards Gray, who was behind Stanley Grinton. Poof, poof, poof. Under the impact of the shockwave, Gray felt as if he had been slapped by an invisible giant palm as he flew backward violently. Just the strong wind from the collision had already caused wounds to appear on Gray's body. It can be used continuously. This is a complete blood skill. Gray didn't stop until he was almost against the wall of the room. His eyes became unprecedentedly solemn. The blood skill that the fog person in front of him possessed was definitely not the same as the blood skill that the four great kingdoms currently possessed. It was an incomplete blood skill. Every time it was used, it had to pay a huge price. It could not be used continuously. Although his opponent's blood skill was not without a price, the price was not as high as an incomplete blood skill. He could use it consecutively within a short period of time. Whoosh! The Fogman faithfully carried out its mission and rushed towards Gray and Stanley Grinton. At this moment, dong dong dong, the king beast, who had been injured at the beginning, had already gotten up and pounced on the Mistman again. Bang! Facing the king beast, the Mistman's attack method was simple and violent. The giant metal sword appeared again and hit the king beast's body. The king beast flew backward again. Bang! With the king beast's delay, Stanley Grinton got up again. Although he was injured, it was not serious. He pounced on the Mistman again, but not long after, he was sent flying again. Bang, bang, bang. The entire space was filled with terrifying waves. The king beast and Stanley Grinton pounced on the Mistman without fear of death. They were attacked by the Mistman's giant sword again and were sent flying backward. Gray, on the other hand, stayed far away from the center of the battle. He had no intention of joining the battle. The destructive power of a king level was definitely not to be trifled with. Even with his current defense, he would definitely be seriously injured if he was hit by a king level attack. Even though he had already hidden far away, his body was still affected by the aftermath of the battle from time to time. Wounds appeared one after another. One could imagine how destructive the Mistman's attack was. The battle continued. One side's attack was strong, while the other side's defense was strong. Soon, both sides had exchanged blows for dozens of times. The Mistman had already used dozens of blood skills. Boom! The king beast was sent flying again by the giant sword. At this time, Stanley Grinton had already gotten up and pounced on the Mistman again. Facing Stanley Grinton, the Mistman did not use any blood skills for the first time. It did not even use the ability of blood beasts. It only used its physical strength to fight against Stanley Grinton. Bang, bang, bang. Even if it was only physical strength, its destructive power was comparable to Stanley Grinton's. The two were entangled and fought. They were completely, evenly matched. Looks like it's no longer enough to support the use of blood skills. Seeing this, Gray's eyes lit up. The Mistman must have been unable to use blood skills after accumulating the cost of using them, at least for a short period of time. Poof! Without its blood skills, the Mistman was naturally no match for Stanley Grinton and the King Beast. The King Beast got up again and attacked the Mistman from the side. It immediately punched the Mistman's body and sent it flying. Gray also joined the battle, causing the Mistman to be surrounded. Poof! After an hour, the Mistman's body was no longer intact. It completely stopped moving, and its body quickly melted away. Luckily, the Mistman's intelligence is not high. It can't determine that I'm its primary target. Otherwise, I'd be the one to lose. Gray muttered to himself as he panted. The reason why he was able to win this battle was because of a trick. Stanley Grinton and the King Beast had attracted the Mistman's attention and prevented it from focusing on him. If the Mistman had given up on Stanley Grinton and the King Beast to attack him, he would have lost this battle. Trial Tower, Level 6 Trial. At this moment, red mist appeared in the air, and a few words appeared in the air. Seeing these words, Gray bitterly smiled. There was actually a 6th level of the trial. Just the 5th level had already forced him to use all of his trump cards, and he had even used some small tricks to finally win. How could he win in the 6th level? In the room, large amounts of red mist rushed in and quickly condensed towards the center. Finally, a Mistman holding a battle sword appeared in the middle of the room. A faint pressure emanated from the Mistman's body, filling the entire room. King Tyr, Gray smiled bitterly. To be able to emit pressure, this Mistman must be comparable to a King Tyr Mistman. Against the Mistman from before, he could still use tricks and hold on until the Mistman could no longer use its blood skills. However, against the king-tier Mistman, this method was useless. Whoosh! The battle erupted. The king-tier Mistman pounced and swung its sword. A giant water blade slashed towards Gray. The room was filled with raging winds, each as sharp as a wind blade. This was the wind created by the water blade, tearing through the air. The king beast rushed out and punched the water blade. Bang! A wound appeared on the king beast's fist, and the king beast's huge body flew backwards. Bang! Stanley Grinton approached the Mistman and swung his broken sword at it. The Mistman also swung his sword and sent Stanley Grinton flying backwards. The king beast and Stanley Grinton attacked the Mistman together. Gray retreated to the edge of the space and watched the battle that he could not participate in. Boom, boom, boom. The room was filled with rumbling sounds. The Mistman was not very intelligent and did not realize that Gray was its primary target. The battle once again fell into a stalemate between attack and defense. However, Gray knew that it was almost impossible to use this method to defeat the king-tier Mistman. The most likely outcome was that Stanley Grinton and the king beast would be destroyed. He was quite anxious, but there was nothing he could do. In the face of absolute strength, even tricks were useless. After fighting for more than 10 minutes, the Mistman still could not take down Stanley Grinton and the king beast. Suddenly, the Mistman's fighting style changed. Whoosh! Facing the incoming Stanley Grinton, he swung his sword. It was also a huge water blade, but this time, the color of the water blade was not water but black. Whoosh! The black water blade emitted an aura that was several times stronger than before as it swiftly chopped down on Stanley Grinton's body. Puff! A huge wound appeared on Stanley Grinton's body. The wound was so deep that the bone could be seen. It was still smoking. The black water blade was actually corrosive. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The terrifying aftermath of the battle spread in all directions, and the black liquid splashed everywhere. Puff, puff. Even at the edge of the room, Gray was still affected. Only a small part of the black liquid splashed, and a terrible wound appeared on his body. The wound was obviously corrosive. He was seriously injured. Hiss! Cold sweat slid down Gray's forehead. Just the aftermath of the battle was enough to injure him. One could imagine how powerful this attack was. It was definitely beyond the strength of a normal king stage. This is a blood skill. A king stage expert knows a blood skill. Gray gasped. A king stage expert was already terrifying enough. With a blood skill, this was not an opponent he could defeat. If this battle continued, he would probably die here today. Whoosh! Suddenly, in the air, the king stage Mistman, who had displayed great combat power, quickly disappeared from the room. In the middle of the room, words formed by the red mist appeared. The participant has been detected to be seriously injured. The trial has ended. The participant has passed the 5th level of the trial. He is rewarded with a 3-star blood skill. Detect the participant's bloodline. A white light suddenly shone on Gray's body. Detection complete. Detected that the participant has the bloodline of a thunder dragon beast, a king beast, a storm falcon. Matching blood skills. Matching successful. He is rewarded with a 3-star blood skill. Berserk. Another white light shone on Gray's body. In an instant, Gray's head swelled. A lot of information was forced into his brain. It was about a blood skill called Berserk. Chapter 493. Swoosh. Before he could check the information about the blood skill Berserk in his mind, Gray realized that his body was becoming blurry, as if he would disappear from the room at any time. Do I have to teleport again? Gray quickly put away Stanley Grinton and the King Beast so that they would not be left behind. He then left the room in a flash. When he reappeared, he realized that he was already in the white light at the top of the spire. He followed the white light and passed through the space crack area, returning to the endless ice field. As he walked out of the white light area, he was greeted by the cold. All he could see was white snow. The Purple Moon Kingdom, Crimson Kingdom, and Jewel Kingdom stood on both sides of the white light, while the Flame Kingdom stood on both sides. Gray walked towards the Purple Moon Kingdom side. Sophia and Francis greeted Gray. The two of them should have completed the trial before Gray. They looked at each other and saw that they were both in a sorry state. They could not help but smile at each other. "Here you go." Sophia passed a bottle of high-grade healing potion to Gray. "Thank you." Gray gratefully accepted the bottle, uncorked it, and drank it in one gulp. Although there were plants in the endless ice field, these plants seemed to be special and had no reverse nurturing ability. Now that he was seriously injured, a bottle of high-grade healing potion was no doubt a timely help. "No need. It will be deducted from the 10 sets of purple moon potions. Just count it as one bottle of purple moon potion," Sophia said with a beaming smile. Ugh! Gray almost spat out the potion in his mouth. He looked at her speechlessly. Was there a need to calculate it so clearly? He had sold 1/4 of the crystal lotus at a low price. High-grade healing potions are very expensive, especially when they come from Sophia. Next to him, Francis looked at Gray with a troubled expression, patted Gray's shoulder, and said, "I used 2 bottles of purple moon potions to exchange for 1 bottle of high-grade healing potion. This is already a friendly price. You should be content." Gray smiled bitterly. He was extorted another bottle of purple moon potion. Suddenly, he felt someone looking at him. He followed the gaze and saw Nicholas Blaze looking at him coldly. His eyes were filled with chilliness. This time, the second prince of the Fire Kingdom, who had never tasted defeat before, was defeated by him and Stanley Grinton. He was forced to flee in a sorry state, and it was clear that this second prince of the Fire Kingdom, who had never tasted defeat before, was extremely angry. Gray sneered as a response. The conflict with the Flame Kingdom was irreconcilable. Even if he did not attack the second prince of the Flame Kingdom, the Flame Kingdom would still try to assassinate him. The only regret was that he could not kill Nicholas Blaze's life. He joined the waiting team and waited for the return of the others who entered the island. However, he did not know how many of them would come back alive. After Gray, a few more people walked out of the white pillar of light. They should be people who were far away from the white spire and had spent a lot of time to reach it. Suddenly, rumble. As a young woman walked out of the white pillar of light, a loud noise suddenly sounded in the sky. Everyone looked up and saw that the white pillar of light from the white spire had disappeared. The huge island in the crack was moving toward the depths of the crack. As for the spatial crack that had spread for thousands of miles, it was slowly shrinking. In the end, both the island and the spatial crack completely disappeared. No trace of their existence could be found. How could it? How could it disappear? Barnet hasn't come out yet. Jarvis, my clan's disciple Jarvis hasn't come out yet. Warner Nahum, why hasn't Warner Nahum come out yet? There was a clamor of voices in the 4 kingdoms. The families whose disciples did not return were anxious and indignant. The island had disappeared. The result could already be imagined. The disciples of their families who did not return had been left on the island forever. Some families stared at the disciples of the enemy families or the enemy kingdoms. Their eyes were cold and their expressions were unfriendly. Suddenly, Gray felt the cold gaze on him again. This time, it was not 1, but more than 10. Some came from the kingdom of raging flames. The battle prowess that Gray displayed on the island should have already reached the ears of these families. In the eyes of these families, the one who was most likely to kill their family members was Gray. Although, in fact, Gray had only killed a disciple of the Flame Kingdom's nobility, it was obviously useless to explain. Not only the Flame Kingdom, but there were also people in the Purple Moon Kingdom looking at Gray. Those were the gazes of the Nahum family. These old guys can't be thinking that I killed Warner Nahum, right? Gray raised his eyebrows. Although he did want to kill Warner Nahum was not killed by him. It was Nicholas Blaze who killed him. He had taken the blame for Nicholas Blaze for no reason, which made him very unhappy. However, there was no way to explain this. Even if he told the truth, the Nahum family would not believe him. The island had disappeared. The Purple Moon, Scarlet, Gem Kingdoms, and the Flame Kingdom did not stay and dispersed. Some families were overjoyed. They were happy that their family's disciples had become stronger. Perhaps, in the near future, their family would have a king-level master. Some families were sad that their family's disciples hadn't made it out of the island. The Purple Moon Kingdom had lost 3 people this time. One of them was from a branch of the royal family, one was from the Addison family, and the last was from Warnam. In the evening, the people of the Purple Moon Kingdom set up their tents. In the Nahum family's tent. It must be Grey Fergus. It must be Grey Fergus who killed Warner Nahum. An old man from the Nahum family said hatefully. So what if we know it's him? We don't have any evidence. Now that the royal family is on his side, we can't do anything to him. Another old man from the Nahum family side. Are we just going to let it go? An old man from the Nahum family clenched his fists and said hatefully, "What else can we do? I heard that on the island, his combat strength was comparable to a third-level desolate level master. Even the entire family is no match for him." The old man in front sighed. If Lord Barnet was here, the Nahum family would not be bullied like this. The tent fell into a long silence. At the same time, in Grey's tent. During the journey, Grey finally had the time to check the information about blood skill frenzy in his mind. Grey browsed through it one by one. The first thing he saw was the introduction of blood skill frenzy. According to the classification, it was a 3-star blood skill. However, Grey did not know how the classification of blood skills was. Therefore, he was not sure what level the 3-star blood skill was. The second thing he saw was the effect of the blood skill. The blood skill could make one's body go into a frenzy for a short period of time. In this state, one's strength, speed, defense, and the power of the blood fiends would be greatly increased. It was very compatible with Grey. Just like the words in the fog, it was indeed matched. The duration of the berserk state depended on the level of the berserk state and the amount of blood energy in the body. The higher the level of the berserk state, the shorter the duration of the berserk state. The more blood energy, the longer the duration of the berserk state. The last thing he saw was the cultivation method of the blood skill. The cultivation of the blood skill frenzy was divided into 3 steps or 3 levels. Every time one reached a level, the power of the frenzy would increase by a few folds. Unlike the cultivation of blood skills, which focused more on one's innate talent, the cultivation of blood skills was the complete opposite. It focused more on one's comprehension. The higher one's comprehension, the easier it would be to cultivate the blood skill. The cultivation method of blood skill frenzy was not a combination of the cultivation method and the totem method. Instead, it was a comprehension of the frenzy law that was imprinted in his mind. This rune, known as the Law of Berserk, was extremely complicated. It was made up of tens of thousands of runes, and these runes were constantly moving and changing. The 3 levels represented the comprehension and resonance of the frenzy law. When one reached the 3rd level, it meant that one had completely comprehended the frenzy law and had reached the highest level of resonance. So this is how blood skills are cultivated. Grey was amazed. He had always been curious about blood skills. It was a pity that he never had the chance to come into contact with them. Even if it was an incomplete blood skill, it would be carefully kept by the family that owned it. Now that he finally had the chance to come into contact with a complete blood skill, he could not help but sigh. He had gained a lot from this trip to the endless ice field. Niklos Blaze should have obtained a blood skill. I wonder if Sophia and the rest have obtained a blood skill. Grey did not think that he was the only one who had obtained a blood skill. At least in his opinion, Niklos Blaze was the most likely person to have obtained a blood skill. Niklos Blaze's combat power was already at Desolate level 3, which was only slightly weaker than his own. He should have the ability to obtain a blood skill. Sophia, Francis, and the rest should be slightly weaker than Niklos Blaze, but he could not be sure if they had obtained a blood skill. If a complete blood skill were to be obtained by a king-level existence that had undergone 3 transformations, then their combat strength would be comparable to Demon Shine's. Unfortunately, with the characteristics of a blood skill, even if one thoroughly comprehended the laws, they still wouldn't be able to teach it to others. The most important thing in cultivating a blood skill was the pattern of the law in the brain. Without the pattern of the law, even if one fully comprehended it, they would not be able to teach another person the corresponding blood skill. If possible, Grey did not mind using cultivation resources as an exchange to teach the frenzy blood skill to a thrice-transformed king-level expert from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. It was not that he was selfless, but blood skills were not something that could not be traded. Moreover, he understood that no egg could remain intact when the nest was overturned. Currently, the Flame Kingdom was the dominant power, and its power alone was enough to suppress the other three kingdoms. This was very dangerous. If they were not careful, the Purple Moon Kingdom could be destroyed. If the Purple Moon Kingdom was destroyed, as a noble of the Purple Moon Kingdom, one could imagine what would happen to him. This was especially so for someone like him who had killed an important person from the Flame Kingdom. The grudge between him and the Flame Kingdom was almost irreconcilable. Unfortunately, from the information that he had, blood skills could only be learned and used by the person who obtained them. It was impossible to teach them to others. Even if he wanted to exchange them with the Purple Moon Kingdom, he could not do so. Chapter 494. Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? In a cave, Blaze, a peak king-tier master of the Flame Kingdom who had completed his third metamorphosis, asked in surprise. Although I'm not absolutely sure, the possibility is very high. Blaze said in a deep voice. The best proof is that the silver-masked man wasn't among those who entered and left the island this time. Could he be hiding among the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom? He just didn't wear a mask when he entered and left. A king-tier old man raised his suspicion. Impossible. I don't think there's anyone among the younger generation of the four kingdoms who can reach the third level of desolation before Niklos. Another king-tier old man shook his head. Interesting. Not only does he have an affinity constitution, but he also has the ability to control corpses. I really want to kill him and dissect him. A man in black revealed a sinister smile. He was the former king of assassins, Theodore Ezekiel. Now, he was one of the leaders of the Flame Kingdom's Blaze Fawn. Stanley. That masked man is Stanley. Stanley's corpse must be in his hands. How dare he desecrate Stanley's corpse? A king-tier master said with murderous intent in his eyes. He was also one of the leaders of Blaze Fawn and had a close relationship with Stanley Grinton, who was also one of the leaders of Blaze Fawn. He had once sent people to bring back Stanley's body, but they found that it was gone. If Stanley's corpse is really in his hands, even if he can't use his blood beast ability, he still has the combat power of a third-level desolation. Moreover, his speed and defense are king-tier. Assassinating him will be very troublesome. A king-tier master frowned. Unless multiple third-level desolation level masters join forces, it'll be very difficult to kill him. This is troublesome. He's actually made a name for himself. One of the king-class experts had a serious expression on his face. Only we have absolute confidence in killing him. However, after the last assassination, we've been heavily guarded by the other three kingdoms. It'll be difficult to sneak in without alerting the Purple Moon Kingdom. Lord Blair, I have a suggestion. Blaze said. Go ahead. Blaze nodded slightly, indicating for Blaze to continue. It's difficult to send a king-class expert into the Purple Moon Kingdom without anyone noticing, but it's not difficult to send a silver-ranked mana weapon. As long as I hand a silver-ranked mana weapon to the Blazing Fong expert hiding in the Purple Moon Kingdom, it should be enough to kill Grey Fergus. A silver-tier mana weapon? Isn't the price too high? If something goes wrong, this silver-tier mana weapon might fall into the hands of the Purple Moon Kingdom. A King Realm expert asked hesitantly. That's the only way. With the masked man's defense and the other forbidden weapons, it'll be difficult to kill him. Blaze said. Let's do it this way. After we return to the kingdom, we must kill him this time. This person's potential has exceeded our expectations time and time again. Blaze made the final decision. A few days later, Gray returned to the Fergus Castle. After a short rest, he immediately began to cultivate the blood skill Berserk. He had been waiting for a long time. Previously, he did not know if cultivating the blood skill Berserk would cause a huge commotion, so he had been holding back. Now, he finally had the chance. The cultivation of the blood skill Berserk was simply to observe and comprehend the law of Berserk directly imprinted in one's mind and form a resonance with the law of Berserk. The deeper one's understanding of the law of Berserk, the stronger the resonance with the law of Berserk would be. If one fully comprehended the law of Berserk, they would be able to form a resonance with the law of Berserk, triggering a power far greater than one's own level. Gray closed his eyes and observed the law of Berserk in his mind. This was a rune that looked like a roaring beast in the shape of a human. The rune was made up of tens of thousands of runes. Each rune moved according to a certain pattern, as if it was undergoing some kind of evolution. Gray stared at the law of Berserk that was made up of tens of thousands of patterns. He had a feeling that he did not know where to start. It was his first time coming into contact with it, so he did not know how to comprehend it. The movement of the tens of thousands of patterns made him feel dazzled. Moreover, although he wanted to get rid of all distracting thoughts and comprehend it calmly, his mind was filled with all kinds of distracting thoughts. He could not calm down at all. The more he tried to suppress them, the more distracting thoughts appeared. These distracting thoughts were like the chirping of insects on a summer day. They would appear from time to time, and no matter how hard he tried to chase them away, they would return after a while. After a full half an hour, Gray was still confused. Instead, he became rather frustrated. Frustrated, he decided to stop suppressing the distracting thoughts in his mind. Instead, he allowed his thoughts to wander. He thought about his gains from this trip to the endless ice field, and thought about the island that had disappeared. What kind of power owned that island? And where was that power now? Had it been destroyed? Or was it in a world outside of this world? He thought about the last trial in the training tower that he had failed. He wondered how many trials there were in the training tower, and whether anyone had passed all the trials before. He thought about Sophia, Francis, and the others. He wondered if they had obtained any blood skills. If they had obtained any blood skills, were they cultivating them now? What was their progress? He thought about what he would do if he could not cultivate any blood skills. The conclusion was that he could not do anything. Not being able to cultivate any blood skills did not mean anything. Although blood skills were powerful, they were not the only way for him to become stronger. Even if he could not cultivate any blood skills, as long as he mastered the ability to transform, his abilities would definitely become stronger as he continued to transform. Those who cultivated blood skills could increase their combat power by a large margin. Since he had a mixed bloodline, he could increase his combat power by a large margin. He could even increase his combat power to a greater extent than his opponents. Up until now, the blood skills that he had seen could only increase his combat power by one level. His mixed blood skills, on the other hand, could increase his combat power by 2 levels. He did not know how much stronger it was compared to blood skills. When he thought about this, Gray felt extremely relaxed. He was no longer worried about his gains and losses. Instead, his thoughts were scattered as he observed the law of fury in his mind with an extremely relaxed attitude. Tens of thousands of Tao patterns were constantly moving in a certain pattern. They intersected with each other, sometimes parallel and sometimes separated. It was as if they were describing the laws of the universe. 2 hours later, Gray exited from his comprehension. His eyes were calm. There was no annoyance or joy. He was as calm as a lake. After his thoughts were scattered and he let nature take its course, he seemed to have comprehended something, but at the same time, it seemed like he had not comprehended anything. However, he did not care anymore. He was already very open-minded. It would be best if he could comprehend it, but there was no loss even if he could not. He decided to spend 1 or 2 hours a day to comprehend it. Every day, he would cultivate his blood skills and spend 1 or 2 hours to comprehend his blood skills. Time flew by quickly. Very soon, a month had passed. Gray could clearly feel that he had some understanding of the law of fury. However, this kind of understanding could not be seen or touched. Furthermore, it could not be described with words. It was just a feeling. This kind of feeling merged with his instincts and formed a kind of understanding of the law. It would often be revealed unconsciously. It was like seeing a leaf fall from a tree. One would definitely think that it would fall to the ground. When one saw a river flowing into the distance, one would definitely think that there was a low-lying area in the distance. When one saw the sun, one would definitely think that it would set in the evening. Currently, his understanding and understanding of the law of fury had merged with his instincts. It could not be found, but it would occasionally be revealed. When this kind of understanding and understanding had merged with his instincts, he would probably resonate with the law of fury and be able to unleash his blood skills. It's time to go hunt that blood fiend. After staying in the castle for so long, Gray decided to leave Fergus Castle and go out for a walk. A long time ago, Gray had once encountered a fox-type blood fiend that was covered in blue fluorescent light at night in a forest. It could control spirits. At that time, he had relied on the teleportation ability of the purple ring to narrowly escape. However, he had developed a strong interest in the fox-type blood fiend's ability to control spirits. He planned to hunt it when he was strong enough. Now that he had reached level 1 of the Desolation level and was not far from level 2, it was time to hunt that fox-type blood fiend. Logically speaking, with his current level, in terms of potential and power, the bloodline he should choose to implant should be of the king level. However, he had a faint feeling that he would not lose out if he used a chance to transform on the fox-type blood fiend's bloodline. The ability of the fox-type blood fiend's bloodline was very likely to be an ability that was not inferior to the ability to control corpses. Using teleportation, Gray arrived at the forest and found the place where he had encountered the fox-type blood fiend. With this place as the center, he began to search the surrounding area. A few days later, Gray stopped his search. He had already searched the surrounding area for dozens of miles, but he could not find the fox-type blood fiend. This was because he had encountered the fox-type blood fiend at night. He had been searching even at night, but he still could not find it. Thinking about it carefully, it had been a year since he had last encountered the fox-type blood fiend. The fox-type blood fiend should have left this forest and moved to another place. This is troublesome. Gray frowned slightly. In his opinion, the ability of the fox-type blood fiend was not inferior to the ability to control corpses. In fact, it was an ability that was comparable to the ability to control corpses. Spirits did not have a physical body, so physical attacks were ineffective. Only lightning and fire could restrain them. To a certain extent, this was a very frightening characteristic. If used well, it might be possible to use it to hunt and kill a king-level blood fiend. But now, the fox-type blood fiend had disappeared. It would be very difficult to find it. Should I give up? But it would be a pity to give up such an ability. Gray took out a map of the kingdom and looked at the nearest cities to see if he could find any relevant information. When he saw a city called Stellaris City at the edge of the forest, his eyes lit up. This is actually near Stellaris City. Chapter 495. I didn't expect this place to be so close to Stellaris City. Gray was slightly surprised. Stellaris City. It was rumored that a long time ago, when this place was not yet a city, a group of stars had fallen and destroyed the forest, leaving behind a scorched land without any vegetation. Stellaris City was a city built on this scorched land without any vegetation, so it was called Stellaris City. The reason why Gray knew of such a rumor in Star City was because he had heard someone mention it before. The person who told him was a person named Laura Garcia. This person was the leader of a mercenary group called the Hellhound Mercenaries, and the Hellhound Mercenaries were stationed in Stellaris City. The Hellhound Mercenaries was the mercenary group that had been hired by the Sidney family to track Rob Tracy. It was a very unconventional mercenary group. Most of the members of the mercenary group cultivated blood techniques related to tracking. Compared to fighting, they were more adept at tracking. Now, if he wanted to find the whereabouts of the fox-type blood fiend, this mercenary group could be said to be his first choice. Using the power of blood, a pair of greenish-black wings grew out. With a slight flap, Gray's figure soared into the sky, heading towards Stellaris City on the map. With the current density of his power of blood, the consumption of the power of blood was nothing. Whoosh! In the air, the swift sound of the wind streaking past his ears. Gray felt a sense of unfettered freedom. He had envied the ability to fly for a long time, and now he finally had it. The pleasure of flying could only be understood by those who had experienced it. In just half an hour, a city was already in sight in front of Gray. He directly crossed the city wall and landed on the streets of the city. A berserker, or a stronger berserker, on the city wall. When the city guards saw Gray cross the city wall and fly into the city, they did not have the slightest intention of stopping him. Instead, Their faces were full of reverence. As city guards, their knowledge was naturally extraordinary. A berserker was at least a berserker who could use the power of shape-shifting, and that was only the minimum. Although berserkers had the ability to mimic shapes, they rarely used it to travel because it consumed too much of their blood force. Someone who could use shape-shifting to travel was most likely a barbarian blood warrior. Even the city lord would have to treat such an existence with respect. He was not someone they could provoke. On the streets, when they saw Gray descending from the sky, the crowd immediately moved far away, forming a vacuum with Gray as the center. Everyone stayed far away from Gray, so as not to provoke Gray and bring about an unexpected disaster. Some people secretly sized up Gray, their eyes filled with curiosity. They were trying to guess at Gray's strength and identity. Gray was already used to this kind of situation. After thinking for a moment, he took out a gold coin and spoke. "Whoever can bring me to the base of the Hellhound mercenaries will get this gold coin." In this world, the purchasing power of gold coins was very strong. Ordinary civilians might not be able to accumulate a single gold coin even if they worked their whole lives. Even for these relatively wealthy city dwellers, this was still a huge fortune. Immediately, there were people who responded. "Sir, I know the base of the Hellhound mercenaries. I'll bring you there." "Sir, I know as well." Several men looked at the gold coin in Gray's hand with fervent gazes and spoke in an extremely humble manner. "I'll take you." Gray threw the gold coin to the man who spoke first. Under the man's lead, he walked towards the center of the city. Looking at the distant Gray and the man who got the gold coin, many people's faces were filled with annoyance. They were annoyed that their reaction was half a beat slower and that they were not the first to speak. Under the man's lead, Gray finally arrived in front of a rather large building. This was the base of the Hellhound mercenaries. "I'm sorry, the Hellhound mercenaries are not accepting missions at the moment." The person who received Gray was a young lady. She could not be considered pretty, but she was brimming with a youthful aura. When Gray explained the reason for his visit, she shook her head and refused. "Then when can I accept a mission?" Gray's brows furrowed slightly as he asked. To find a fox-type blood fiend, the Hellhound mercenaries were indispensable. If it was not convenient for the other party to accept a mission at the moment, he could only come back after a period of time. "I'm not sure." The young lady shook her head, a trace of worry in her eyes. Sensing the young lady's worry, Gray frowned and asked, "Did something happen to your mercenary group?" "No, nothing." The young lady was obviously wary of Gray. She took a step back and shook her head. "My name is Gray Fergus. I can be considered acquaintances with your group leader, Laura. Why don't you tell me what happened? Maybe I can be of some help." Gray introduced himself. Gray did not spend much time with the Hellhound mercenaries, but he had a good impression of them. He even learned some tracking techniques from them. If they were really in trouble, and he had the ability to solve it, he would not mind lending a helping hand. "Please wait a moment." The young lady looked at Gray suspiciously. However, when she thought of the difficulties that the mercenary group had encountered recently, she decided to give it a try. She invited Gray to sit down and left in a hurry. Not long after, a middle-aged man followed her in. Sir Gray, the middle-aged man, had a medium build. When he saw Gray, his face lit up with joy as he quickly stepped forward and greeted him respectfully. Many people had heard of Earl Grey, who was now famous in the Purple Moon Kingdom, but not many had actually seen him in person. However, he was one of the few people who had seen the other party. Moreover, he had seen the other party before the other party's reputation had spread throughout the Purple Moon Kingdom. However, at that time, he had never thought that the other party would grow to such an extent. "What kind of trouble have you encountered? Why don't you tell me? If I can help, I will definitely not refuse." Gray nodded at the middle-aged man. Gray had some impression of this middle-aged man. He was a member of the Hellhound mercenaries who followed Laura Garcia. "Yes, Sir Gray." The middle-aged man quickly explained the situation as if he had grasped at a life-saving straw. Half a month ago, a batch of precious goods belonging to Count Angus family near Stellar City was robbed. After investigation, the Angus family found that one of the robbers was a former member of the Hellhound mercenaries. Because of this, the Hellhound mercenaries were implicated. Now, all the high-ranking members of the mercenary group were taken away by the Angus family for investigation. Sir Grey, that person has left the Hellhound mercenaries for a year. We really don't know what he did after he left the mercenary group. Please plead for mercy for the Hellhound mercenaries, Sir Grey. The middle-aged man pleaded. I could try to plead for mercy for the Hellhound mercenaries, but I'm not sure if it will work. Grey thought for a while and said, the Angus family was one of the Count families in the kingdom. Grey had some dealings with this family on the battlefield with the Flame Kingdom. Of course, they were only acquaintances at the banquet. They did not have a deep relationship, so he was not sure if they would give him face. Thank you, Sir Grey, the middle-aged man said gratefully. He only knew of Count Grey's current status in the entire Purple Moon Kingdom. Although he was only a count, his status was not inferior to a marquis. In his opinion, with Grey's pleading, the possibility of success was very high. Sitting in the carriage arranged by the Hound mercenary group, he left Stellara City and headed to Angus Castle. Seeing Grey's noble attire, the castle guard politely asked about his identity. Finally, Grey was led to the VIP reception room of Angus Castle. Count Grey, long time no see. A middle-aged man walked in, followed by a young man and a young woman. The middle-aged man had a square face with 2 strands of brown beard. It was Count Angus. The young man behind him had a handsome face. Grey had seen him on the battlefield with the Flame Kingdom. His name was Reg Angus. The young woman was wearing a dress and had a beautiful face. She should be the daughter of Count Angus. Both parties greeted each other and sat down. According to the introduction, the young woman was indeed the daughter of Count Angus. Her name was Heidi Angus. Count Grey, may I know why you're here this time? Count Angus asked. To tell you the truth, I'm here to plead with Count Angus on behalf of the Hellhound mercenaries. Captain O'Lora of the Hellhound mercenaries is acquainted with me, but she was implicated in the robbery of your family's goods. Grey said politely, I know Captain O'Lora's character better. She shouldn't have done such a thing, so I hope Count Angus can be lenient. Count Grey is too polite. This matter has been investigated clearly. It has nothing to do with the Hellhound mercenaries. Count Grey can take them away later. Count Angus' expression changed slightly, and then he smiled. Thank you, Count Angus, Grey said gratefully. After chatting with the three for a while and chatting about some relaxing topics, Grey got up and left with the Hound mercenaries. Father, has this matter really been investigated clearly? Does it really have nothing to do with the Hound mercenaries? After Grey left, Heidi Angus asked doubtfully among the 3 people left in the living room. It doesn't matter whether it has anything to do with it or not. Count Grey personally came to plead for mercy, so of course we have to give him face. Reg Angus shook his head and said, Is Count Grey's position in the kingdom really that high? So high that the Angus family has to give him face? Heidi Angus asked doubtfully. She had indeed heard of Grey, but she didn't have a deep understanding of him. She was only familiar with the level of aristocratic young ladies and rarely involved in politics. So although she had heard of Grey and knew that he was famous in the Purple Moon Kingdom, she didn't have a clear understanding of his strength and status. It's only high, not low, Count Angus replied. In fact, not to mention our Count family, even the Marquis family and the Duke family have to give him some face. At this point, Count Angus sighed slightly, looked at Heidi Angus, and said, It's a pity that he and Her Royal Highness seem to be. Otherwise, the Angus family can fight for him. Chapter 496. In the carriage, Grey saw the leader of the Hellhound mercenaries, O'Lora Garcia, and the other captains of the Hellhound mercenaries. O'Lora Garcia's face was a little pale, and her hair was a little messy. The other captains of the Hellhound mercenaries were in a similar state. They all had injuries on their bodies, and it was obvious that they had suffered some physical pain after being taken away by the Angus family. Sir Grey, the Hellhound mercenaries will remember what happened this time. O'Lora Garcia bowed to Grey gratefully. This time, they were implicated in the robbery of the Angus family's goods. Originally, they thought that they would be doomed, and they had already prepared for the worst. However, they did not expect to be able to escape successfully in the end. When she was informed by the Angus family that she could leave, she almost thought that she had heard wrongly. It was only when the other party reminded her a second time and vaguely mentioned Gray's role in this matter that she truly believed that they were out of danger. Leader Olora, you don't have to be like this. The Angus family let you go because they have already found out that this matter has nothing to do with you. Gray waved his hand and said, if Sir Gray had not interceded for us, even if they had found out that this matter had nothing to do with us, they would not have let us go so easily. Olora Garcia shook her head and smiled bitterly. She was very familiar with the way the aristocrats acted. Once they were implicated, it would be almost impossible for them to get away easily. Moreover, as far as she knew, until this morning, the Angus family still suspected that this matter had something to do with the Hellhound mercenaries. Now that they suddenly said that they had found out that this matter had nothing to do with the Hellhound mercenaries, it was obvious that they were doing this for Gray's sake. Gray smiled. If he could help someone he was familiar with, he would not mind doing so. Moreover, he still needed the help of the Hellhound mercenaries to find a fox blood fiend this time. Lord Gray, I already know that you want to search for traces of that fox-type blood fiend. We will set off tomorrow to search for that fox-type blood fiend. There's no rush. I'm not in a hurry. You guys should rest for a few days first. We'll talk after you've recovered. A few days later, the Hellhound mercenaries, under the leadership of their leader, Laura Garcia, who had just recovered from her injuries, arrived at the place where Gray had first discovered the fox-type blood fiend and began searching for it. A few months ago, there was indeed a fox-type blood fiend here. The Hellhound mercenaries were indeed professionals. Gray had been searching for several days without finding any trace of the blood fiend. On the other hand, the Hellhound mercenaries had already found many clues about the fox-type blood fiend the moment they arrived. Not only did they find traces left behind by the fox-type blood fiend, but they also found a few strands of blue fur left behind by it. Can you track it? Gray asked. A few months have passed, and the scent has already dissipated. Fortunately, blood fiends don't know how to hide their tracks, so we could track it from the traces it left behind. Olora Garcia said confidently. After a few days of tracking, Gray and the Hellhound mercenaries arrived at the vicinity of a natural lake. We can already track its scent. It shouldn't be too far away. Gray and the Hellhound mercenaries continued forward until they arrived at the vicinity of a rocky mountain. They circled around the rocky mountain and saw a cave in the distance. It's in this cave, Olora Garcia said with certainty. In terms of strength, she was far inferior to Gray. However, she was still quite confident in her searching skills. After all, the Hellhound mercenaries were known for their searching skills. This was the specialty of the Hellhound mercenaries. Here's good enough. You guys find a secluded place to hide so that you won't be affected by our battle. Gray warned the members of the Demon Dog mercenary group and walked towards the cave with light footsteps. Olora Garcia did not hesitate. During the search, they had already learned from Gray that this was a fox-type blood fiend with the strength of a desolate-level beast. They knew that this was not a battle that they could participate in. After entering the cave, Gray used his shadow ability to blend into the shadows and walk towards the depths of the cave. After walking for a few dozen meters, streaks of misty white light appeared in front of them, swimming in the Shandong tunnel. They were actually specters. Although it was daytime, they were in a cave where sunlight couldn't reach. Therefore, even ghosts could move around during the day. It's really inside. Seeing these spirits, Gray was even more certain that the fox-type blood fiend was in this cave. He stealthily moved forward, trying to avoid the spirits and alert the fox-type blood fiend in advance. But at this moment, swoosh, swoosh, all the spirits in the cave moved and pounced in his direction. Obviously, these spirits were like Gray, able to see through the shadows and discover people hiding in the shadows. It was just that he did not know how they discovered him. I've been discovered. Seeing that he was completely exposed, Gray no longer hesitated. A purple flame emitting a terrifyingly high temperature completely filled the cave and pushed into the cave. Chi-chi. All the spirits that pounced on him melted like candles and disappeared completely. Whoosh. Gray quickly rushed into the cave. Along the way, he encountered spirits that had sensed the commotion outside. All of them were greeted by Gray's purple flame. 4 spirits, Fire and lightning were their nemeses. In the face of fire and lightning, their incorporeal bodies became extremely fragile and were easily burned to ashes by Gray. Soon, Gray rushed into an empty space. In this space, an 8-meter-long fox-type blood fiend with blue fur was staring at Gray with its slightly hideous teeth. Beside it, there was a spirit that was more than 10 meters long. This spirit had 1-meter-long fangs on both sides of its mouth. It should have been a pig-type blood fiend when it was alive. What shocked Gray even more was the strength of this spirit when it was alive. King-level blood fiend. Judging from its size, this spirit should have been a genuine king-level blood fiend before it was killed. But he did not know how this king-level blood fiend died. Had he died in an accident, or had he been killed by the spirit controlled by the fox-type blood fiend? If it was the latter, then Gray's guess was correct. The ability to control spirits was able to kill king-level blood fiends. Poof! Suddenly, Gray's head throbbed with pain. It was as if a long needle had pierced his brain. It was so painful that his head felt like it was splitting. Soul attack. This was a method that directly attacked the soul. It was similar to the soul attack Gray had encountered in the secret chamber of the Half Moon Castle. His guess was indeed correct. This fox-type blood fiend indeed had the ability to avoid physical attacks on the soul. Whoosh whoosh. While Gray's head was throbbing with pain, the fox-type blood fiend and king-level blood fiend spirit moved and pounced on Gray together. The intense pain caused cold sweat to roll down Gray's forehead. Fortunately, he was now at the peak of the first level of the desolate level. He could barely withstand this level of attack. It was also fortunate that he did not come before reaching the desolate level. If he had come before that, he might have fainted or even died from the soul attack just now. Enduring the pain in his head, Gray attacked. Purple flames surged out and attacked the king-level blood fiend spirit. In his opinion, the king-level blood fiend spirit was the biggest threat to him. He did not know if he could withstand it after being possessed by the spirit, but he definitely did not want to try. Woo-woo. Under the purple flames, the king-level blood fiend spirit was sent flying. Many parts of its body were melted by the flames, and it let out a sharp cry. Whoosh! Although the king-level blood fiend spirit was blocked, the fox-type blood fiend was not. It approached Gray and violently swiped at Gray with its claws. At this time, Gray finally recovered from the soul attack. Black mist swirled around his long sword, and it became a few meters long. He slashed out. Poof! Facing a third-level desolate level attack, the fox-type blood fiend could not resist at all. It was almost split in half by Gray's sword. Blood gushed out as the fox-type blood fiend smashed into the innermost wall. It was a long time before it could get up. However, just because it could not get up did not mean it could not attack. Poof! Another wave of soul attack attacked Gray, aggravating the pain that Gray had just recovered. Moreover, the king-level blood fiend spirit, which had not died from the previous flame attack, charged at him again. Whoosh! With great difficulty, he used the purple flames to attack the king-level blood fiend spirit. Chi-chi! The king-level blood fiend spirit was sent flying again. The purple flames wrapped around its body. The king-level blood fiend spirit howled in pain as it was engulfed by the purple flames. Even so, it did not die. Obviously, as a king-level blood fiend spirit, it had a strong resistance against flames, which were extremely effective against it. Boom, boom, boom. Gray attacked continuously. Several purple flames hit the king-level blood fiend spirit again and again. The king-level blood fiend spirit was completely engulfed by the purple flames. Finally, the king-level blood fiend spirit dissipated completely. After confirming that the king-level blood fiend spirit was dead, Gray rubbed his temples and walked toward the fox-type blood fiend. Large amounts of blood flowed out of the other party's body. It was completely still, and there was not even a trace of struggle. It was obviously dead. Gray hurried forward to collect the blood. After collecting the blood, he also collected the fox-type blood fiend's carcass. Walking out of the cave, Gray met up with the Hellhound mercenaries. That fox-type blood fiend has been killed. Olora Garcia looked at Gray in astonishment. The other Hellhound mercenaries were also shocked. That was a desolate level fox-type blood fiend. If their mercenary group had encountered it, they would have been wiped out. They had thought that it would be a fierce battle. Unexpectedly, Gray had only entered for a short while before the battle was over. Since when were desolate-level blood fiends so weak? Was Earl Grey too strong? Or was a fox-type blood fiend too weak? Yes, it has been killed. Gray nodded. It was not that the fox-type blood fiend was weak. It was that he was too strong. If it had been a first-stage desolate-level blood warrior, even one with fire or lightning abilities, it would have been impossible for him to end the battle so quickly. It was hard to say who would have died in the end. Only he, who was at first-stage desolate level but had the combat strength of a third-stage desolate level, could kill the fox-type blood fiend in one blow and end the battle quickly. Chapter 497. Evening, Mercenary City, Storm Mercenary Group Leaders Lounge. An old man with white hair and a dignified face stood in front of the window, looking out at the purple moon with a trace of nostalgia in his eyes. He was Marlowe Sidney, the leader of the Storm Mercenary Group, one of the largest mercenary groups in the Purple Moon Kingdom. In the room, lights flickered and shadows flickered. Suddenly, from the shadows, a black-clothed figure slowly appeared behind Marlowe Sidney. Marlowe Sidney turned around without any surprise and looked at the black-clothed figure. "What's the order from the organization?" He looked at the black-clothed figure and asked. The information revealed in his words was shocking. The leader of the Storm Mercenary Group, one of the largest mercenary groups in the Purple Moon Kingdom, was actually a subordinate of a certain faction. It's still the same order. Kill Gray Fergus. The black-clothed man said with a hoarse voice. That's forcing us. With Gray Fergus's current strength, even if we work together, we won't be able to kill him. Marlowe Sidney frowned. As the leader of the Storm Mercenary Group, he announced his strength as a barbarian, but in reality, it was just a facade. His true strength was at the third level of the Desolate level, and he was the person in charge of a stronghold of the Flaming Fong in the Purple Moon Kingdom. The Storm Mercenary Group was naturally one of the strongholds. The organization is naturally aware of this. That's why they asked me to bring this over. A long spear appeared in the black-clothed man's hand. It was a red spear, and the color was dark as if it was soaked in blood. The handle of the spear was spiral-shaped. It was made up of two blood-colored metals twisted together, just like two snakes twisted together. The tip of the spear was like the head of a snake with poisonous fangs. The sharpest tip of the spear was the poisonous fangs of the snake. With the appearance of this gun, a cold, killing intent that made one's hair stand on end emitted from this gun. Marlowe Sidney couldn't help but tense up. Could this be a silver magic weapon? Feeling the murderous intent from the spear, Marlowe Sidney was shocked. Yes, this is a silver-grade magic weapon. The black-clothed man nodded with a hoarse voice. You're actually willing to use a silver-rank mana weapon for him? Is it worth it to take such a huge risk? Marlowe Sidney said hesitantly. His potential is far beyond your imagination. The organization's attitude is to kill him at all costs, the man in black said with certainty. It had been several days since Gray returned to Fergus Castle after hunting the fox-type blood fiends. Compared to the past, Fergus Castle was extremely lively today. Many nobles had gathered because a wedding was being held in the castle. It was Elise's wedding, and the bride was the daughter of a viscount in Sydney. Gray didn't have much of a good impression of this elder brother in name. Of course, he didn't hate him either. It was more of a kind of indifference. Since it was the other party's wedding, Gray still had to show some appreciation. He gifted the other party a bronze-ranked mana sword. Of course, it was only the most ordinary kind. Even so, it was still extremely valuable. It was the most expensive gift Elise had ever received. Gray didn't stay in the banquet hall for long. After showing his face for a short while, he left. Through a secret passage in the castle, he appeared in a forest near the castle. There was an exquisite wooden house in the forest. Gray had built it for the convenience of training. Because it had become Gray's training ground, this forest had become a restricted area in Fergus territory. There were people from the Fergus family patrolling the perimeter. Apart from members of the Fergus family, no one else was allowed to enter. Barbara would come here every few days to clean this place. Sometimes, Gray and Barbara would also stay in this wooden house. Standing in the empty space in the forest, Gray took out a bottle of Blaze Potion. It had been more than a month since he'd last used it. It was time to use it again. Currently, he had 5 bottles of Blaze Potion and 9 bottles of Purple Moon Potion for training. These 9 bottles of Purple Moon Potion had been sent by the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom not long ago. The original agreement was 10 bottles, but 1 bottle was missing. Naturally, it had been swallowed by a certain profiteer. After drinking the potion that was like a golden blaze, an intense, numbing feeling spread throughout Gray's body. It was like a tide, surging through Gray's body in wave after wave. Originally, Gray had been stuck at the bottleneck between the first level and the second level. But with the help of this bottle of medicinal liquid, Gray could clearly feel that this bottleneck had been broken. His body's quality was increasing at a terrifying rate. Every part of his flesh, every piece of bone, every drop of blood, and even every strand of hair was transforming and becoming stronger. Traces of a black substance were expelled from the pores of his body. These were the impurities produced by the rapid transformation of his cells. At his heart, the whirlpool formed by the blood force became even larger, as if it was a real whirlpool. At the center of the whirlpool, the blood force slowly turned from mist to liquid. When the blood force completely turned into liquid, Gray would reach the king stage. The blood force of a king stage powerhouse was in liquid form. Compared to normal blood force, this type of blood force was much more powerful and had a larger capacity per unit volume. After a long time, the intense, numbing feeling weakened. Gray began to cultivate his blood technique. The first round of blood technique. The second round of blood techniques, first training method. The second round of blood techniques, second training method. The second round of blood techniques, third training method. The second round of blood techniques, fourth training method. In one breath, Gray completed 2 rounds of blood techniques cultivation. This proved that he had indeed entered the third round of blood techniques cultivation. He had also reached the second level of the desolate level. After washing off the dirt on his body, Gray extended his greenish-black wings and flew into the sky. He left the forest and landed in a stone forest far away from Fergus Castle. Whoosh! His gaze landed on a boulder that weighed more than 100 tons a few dozen meters away. In the next instant, Gray appeared beside the boulder. He covered dozens of meters in the blink of an eye. One could imagine how terrifying his current speed was. He raised his fist and smashed down on the boulder. Crack! Under Gray's punch, huge cracks spread out from the spot where Gray's fist had struck. They were like several thick tree roots tangled together. In the end, this huge boulder, which weighed over 100 tons, turned into countless pieces of gravel. Gray smashed a 100-ton boulder with one punch. This was an extremely terrifying level of power. If a barbarian blood warrior had been hit by Gray's punch, he would have definitely been smashed into meat paste. My speed and power should be comparable to the third level of the desolate level. Gray nodded with satisfaction. The King Kong King Beast Blood Meridian was indeed extremely powerful. Although it was still at the second level of the desolate level, its power and speed were comparable to the third level of the desolate level. With such power and speed, even if he did not take into account the abilities of the other blood beasts, he could compete with the second level of the desolate level. He might even surpass it. Next is defense. With his body metallized, Stanley Grinton appeared in front of Gray. He unsheathed the broken saber at his waist and slashed at Gray's body. Bang! Under Stanley Grinton's attack, Gray's clothes were torn and his body flew backward. Rocks were smashed into pieces one after another. He finally stopped after flying for more than 100 meters. Standing up and patting the dust off his body, Gray looked at the place where Stanley Grinton's saber had hit him. On the metallized bronze skin, there was not a trace of a wound, not even a scratch. His opponent's attack, which was at the third level of the desolate level, did not leave a single wound. One could imagine how terrifying his defense had become after reaching the second level of the desolate level. Next is the ability of the blood beasts. With a thought, a large amount of black fog gathered in front of Gray and turned into a huge whirlpool, attacking forward. Rocks were smashed into pieces by the black fog whirlpool. A deep gully, which was dozens of meters wide, appeared on the ground. It extended forward for hundreds of meters before it finally stopped. The attack left a gully that was hundreds of meters long. This was a terrifying attack that was enough to make a third level of the desolate level Blood Warrior's hair stand on end. However, Gray could not help but show a trace of disappointment. It did not reach the king level. Although this attack was powerful enough to make a third level desolate level Blood Warrior unable to resist, it had not reached the king level. Having seen a king level battle and even commanded Stanley Grinton to fight a king level blood beast from afar, Gray knew how powerful a king level blood beast ability was. Although the Black Fog's power had skyrocketed, it was definitely not at the king level. As expected, it's because of the ice and fire abilities. Originally, with the enhancement of the 3 mixed abilities, Gray, who had reached the second level of the king level, was comparable to a king-level blood beast. However, among the 3 mixed bloodlines, the ice and fire bloodlines were only at the desolate level. The ice and fire bloodlines at the desolate level slowed down the overall enhancement of the 3 mixed abilities, resulting in the power of the 3 mixed abilities not reaching the king level. Obviously, if he wanted the 3 mixed powers to reach the king level, he would have to increase the levels of his fire bloodline and ice bloodline to the king level. The blood of a fire-type king-level blood beast is easy to get, but the blood of an ice-type king-level blood beast is difficult. Gray's affinity constitution referred to the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, as the fire-type bloodline was the Purple Flame Beast bloodline, while the ice-type bloodline was the Ice Soul Beast bloodline. The Purple Moon Kingdom had the Purple Flame Beast bloodline method, so they definitely had the blood of a king-level blood beast. However, it was hard to say if they had the blood of an Ice Soul Beast bloodline. Although other Ice-type king-level blood beast blood would work, he obviously could not ask the royal family to buy it. After all, his affinity constitution was compatible with the Ice Soul Beast bloodline. I can only think of other ways, or hunt it myself. Chapter 498. I can only think of other ways, or hunt it myself. The only other places he could buy blood from were some heavyweight auction houses. However, it was almost impossible to come across an ice-type king-level blood being auctioned in a short period of time. Therefore, although it was possible to buy blood from other places, it was not practical. The only way left was to hunt it himself. However, this was also a very unrealistic method. After reaching the second level of the Desolation level, the power of his blood fiends had increased greatly. However, it was still not at the king level. It was almost impossible to rely on this combat strength to kill a king-level blood fiend. No, it's possible. Gray thought of the king-level blood fiend ghost he had encountered while hunting the fox-type blood fiend. If this king-level blood fiend ghost had been killed by the fox-type blood fiend using the ghost, then it was not impossible to kill the king-level blood fiend. The characteristic of the ghost was that it did not have a physical body. Physical attacks were completely ineffective. Elemental attacks were only effective against fire and lightning. Other elemental attacks were ineffective against it. The blood fiend he needed to kill was an ice-type king-level blood fiend. Logically speaking, the ice ability of such a blood fiend should not be able to hurt the ghost. However, the ghost could penetrate the body and cause internal damage. In theory, this method could be used to injure an ice-type king-level blood fiend. Logically speaking, it was entirely possible to use this method to kill an ice-type king-level blood fiend. Of course, whether it would succeed or not depended on the king-level blood fiend's resistance, and whether it could withstand the ghost's damage. It's worth a try. After careful consideration, Gray felt that it was worth a try. Even if he failed, he would not encounter any danger. He only needed to control the ghost from a distance, and did not need to get close to the king-level blood fiend. Since I want to use the ghost to try and kill a king-level blood fiend, the most important thing now is to obtain the ability to control the ghost. Although it was very important to evolve by consuming the blood of a flame or ice king-level blood fiend, and it was related to whether or not his combat strength could be comparable to that of a king-level blood fiend. However, for the time being, the fox-type blood fiend's ability to kill a king-level blood fiend was more important. After reaching the second level of the Desolation level, I can start to consume the blood of a fox-type blood fiend to evolve. Back at the wooden house in the woods, Gray lay in the bathtub and swallowed the blood of a fox-type blood fiend. Pop! After swallowing the fox-type blood fiend's blood, Gray's complexion suddenly turned ashen. He felt as if he was being pricked by needles the moment he swallowed the fox-type blood fiend's blood. The pain assaulted his head, as if it wanted to bore a hole in his brain. Pain in the soul. This was not a physical pain, but a pain that came from the soul. The fox-type blood fiend's ability was a kind of soul ability, and this kind of soul ability was controlled by the soul. At this moment, his soul should be undergoing some kind of transformation to obtain a soul ability. Pop, pop, pop. The pain of his soul attacked Gray wave after wave, just like a tide. Before the first wave had completely fallen, the next wave had already caught up, causing Gray to be in so much pain that he broke out in a cold sweat. He gritted his teeth and persisted. Every transformation would bring about all kinds of pain to the body. Some would feel like being burned by fire, some would feel like being struck by lightning, and some would feel like being cut by wind blades. Fortunately, pain was a common occurrence. After experiencing so much of this kind of pain, his ability to endure pain had become much stronger. Even in the face of this kind of pain that directly attacked his soul, he could still endure it. Wave after wave of pain assaulted Gray's mind, and his consciousness became fuzzy. After a long time, he felt the pain in his head gradually lessen until it completely disappeared. Phew! Lying in the bathtub, Gray, whose hair was completely soaked in sweat, let out a long sigh. His body was somewhat exhausted. What kind of pain was the most painful? Some people said it was the pain of a broken limb, while others said it was the pain of digging out an eye. However, if someone asked Gray, Gray would say it was the pain of the soul. The soul was the foundation of living creatures. Without a soul, a living creature could not be called a living creature. For example, Stanley Grinton, who was being controlled by Gray, had an intact body, but could not display intelligence like a normal person. The reason was that he lacked the most fundamental and core of all, the soul. When he died, his soul had already shattered and dissipated. Without his soul, no matter how well his body was preserved, he was only a corpse. After lying down for a long time, Gray recovered some strength. He washed his body, put on his clothes, and climbed out of the bathtub. The transformation of his soul was something he did not want to experience a second time. In the middle of the night, in a forest dozens of miles away from Fergus Castle, the purple moon hung high in the sky. One after another, nocturnal animals crawled out from their caves or other hiding places. They began a game of hunter and prey. Awoo! A gray wolf howled at the purple moon in the sky. Its green eyes looked like two wisps of willow, the wisps under the moonlight, making one's hair stand on end. Whoosh! At this moment, a human figure suddenly appeared beside the gray wolf. The gray wolf jumped in fright and instinctively jumped to the side. However, at this moment, a hand grabbed its throat. With a light squeeze, its throat was crushed. This human figure was Gray. He left the castle under the cover of night and came to the forest dozens of miles away from the castle to test his new ghost ability. Gray pressed one hand on the gray wolf's head. In just a moment, a white light floated out from the gray wolf's body and floated in front of Gray. This was a ghost that looked like a wolf. It looked exactly like the gray wolf that Gray had just killed. It was the ghost of that gray wolf. It should have dissipated, but it was turned into a ghost by Gray's new ghost ability. Looking at the ghost wolf beside him, Gray felt a telepathic connection. With just a thought, the ghost wolf in front of him would act according to his will. Cuckoo! On a tree not far away, a night bird let out a terrifying cry. Gray issued an order to the ghost wolf. The next moment, the ghost wolf's body quickly floated out and pounced on the night bird. Sensing danger, the night bird wanted to fly away in horror. However, before it could fly away, the ghost wolf had already crashed into its body. Its huge body directly drilled into its body. The night bird fell straight from the sky and landed on the withered leaves on the ground. The ghost wolf drilled out of the night bird's body. Gray walked over to check on it. The night bird's body was cold, and it was already dead. There were injuries on its body because it fell from the tree, but it was obviously not a fatal injury. The real cause of its death was the injury caused by the ghost wolf's possession. I don't know if the lethality of this possession is constant or if the higher the level of the ghost when it was alive, the greater the lethality. After turning the night bird's soul into a ghost, Gray ordered the night bird to attack other wild beasts. Soon, Gray discovered that the speed at which the ghost bird killed wild beasts was obviously not as fast as the ghost wolf. In other words, the higher the level of the ghost when it was alive, the greater the lethality. It seems that in order to maximize the power of the ghost, the level of the ghost I control must be as high as possible. Before I kill a king-level blood fiend, I need to control as many desolate-level ghosts as possible. At the thought of desolate-level ghosts, Gray thought of a place. It was the place where hundreds of thousands of ghosts once roamed at night. Gray's specter ability allowed him to control not only the specters he created, but also the specters that were naturally born. In a place where hundreds of thousands of ghosts once roamed, he might encounter a large number of desolate-level ghosts. He took out a weapon and let the ghost he controlled attach itself to it. Since ghosts did not have a physical body, they could attach themselves to anything. A pair of greenish-black wings grew out. Gray quickly rushed toward the night forest. With the terrifying speed of a level 2 desolate-level ghost, he arrived at the place where the ghost had once roamed at night in an hour. Although it was nighttime, the wandering ghosts could not be seen. However, Gray could clearly sense the existence of ghosts. After obtaining the ghost power, he developed a sense for ghosts. He could sense the aura of ghosts within a certain range, and he could roughly sense the strength of their aura. He sensed the existence of ghosts underground. Their auras varied in strength. However, they seemed to be confined underground by some kind of force and could not come to the surface at will. He punched the ground, leaving a large pit. His sense was right. He had indeed discovered a ghost. It was a 2-meter-long tiger-shaped ghost. He tried to control the tiger-shaped ghost. Soon, he successfully gained control of the ghost. The ghost power easily seized control of the tiger-shaped ghost from the mysterious runic matrix. The mysterious runic matrix is controlling too many ghosts. The strength of its control over each ghost is weakened. That's why I was able to easily gain control of the ghost. Gray quickly searched the area, looking for ghosts with powerful auras. According to his estimation, the more powerful the ghost was, the more powerful it was when it was alive. More than an hour later, he stopped in a forest. He sensed a powerful ghost being confined to the ground under his feet. Boom! He suddenly punched the ground. Soil and stones flew everywhere, and a pit more than 10 meters long appeared. In the pit, other than Gray, there was another ghost. It was a huge 8-meter-long ghost. It stood on its hind legs, and its body was extremely wide. Judging from its appearance, this ghost should have been a desolate-level, bear-shaped blood fiend when it was alive. Seeing the sudden appearance of a human, the bear-shaped blood fiend ghost followed the mysterious runic matrix's control and prepared to hide in another place. However, at this moment, Gray's ghost power was activated. The bear-shaped blood fiend ghost stiffened for a moment, and soon, the control fell into Gray's hands. At dawn, Gray, who had stayed up all night, could not help but feel sleepy. As a result, he now had 3 desolate-level spirits under his control. It's time to test my new ability, which is a combination of ghost power and corpse control. Gray prepared to return to Fergus Castle to catch up on his sleep. However, before that, he had a new ability to test, which was a combination of ghost power and corpse control. Chapter 499. To a certain extent, the ghost ability and the corpse control ability were 2 very similar abilities. They both had the effect of controlling. It was precisely because of this characteristic that these 2 abilities were fused in Gray's body, forming the 3rd hybrid ability. Now, he was going to test this 3rd hybrid ability. Shuttling through the woods, Gray looked for suitable creatures to test the 3rd hybrid ability. A 1-meter-long blood fiend with green fur all over its body discovered Gray and immediately attacked Gray. This was the murderous-level blood fiend, Wood Monkey. It could manipulate plants and turn them into its own means of attack. Several plant branches grew rapidly and attacked Gray. However, just as these plant branches were about to attack Gray, they suddenly stopped and attacked the wood monkey instead. In the end, the wood monkey was completely tied up. Gray often used the reverse nurturing ability obtained from the berserk blood fiend, Jasper Lizard. However, he had not used the plant ability for a long time. Although it was abandoned by Gray, it was still a berserk ability after all. It was a full level stronger than the murderous level wood monkey. It easily seized control of the plant. Walking to the side of the tightly bound wood monkey, Gray pulled out his sword and pierced the wood monkey's heart. Bright red blood flowed out and dyed the vines that bound the wood monkey red. The wood monkey struggled slightly and then stopped moving. Gray stretched out his hand to check the wood monkey's breathing. After confirming that it was indeed dead, he pressed one hand on the wood monkey's head and used the third hybrid ability he had just obtained. Swish! In addition to the plants that bound the wood monkey, a large amount of green light floated out from the surrounding plants and gathered toward the wood monkey, wrapping it up completely. Under the green light, the wounds on the wood monkey's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a moment, the green light disappeared and the wood monkey's injuries were completely healed. There was no trace of a wound, only traces of blood that had not dried up. Rustle. At this moment, the originally dead wood monkey opened its eyes and twisted its body, making the vines and leaves wrapped around it rustle. From this point of view, the hybrid ability of Ghost, Corpse Control, and Reverse Nurturing could also control the dead bodies of living creatures. However, this was obviously not all of this hybrid ability. Gray stretched out his hand to touch the wood monkey. A slight warmth was transmitted to his hand. Then, he checked the wood monkey's breathing. He could clearly hear the sound of breathing. This wood monkey is alive. The temperature felt in his hand, and the sound of breathing from the wood monkey's nose proved that the wood monkey in front of him was alive. The wooden monkey that had been dead a few minutes ago came back to life with the help of Gray's new hybrid ability. Gray released the control of the vines wrapped around the wooden monkey. The next moment, the vines wrapped around the wooden monkey automatically separated, and the wooden monkey landed lightly on the ground. This resurrected wooden monkey had the same ability to manipulate plants as it had when it was alive. The only difference was that the wood monkey, which broke free from the vines, did not attack Gray. Instead, it had a sense of closeness to Gray. Moreover, Gray could also give orders to it in his mind. Resurrecting dead creatures. This hybrid ability should be called the Resurrection ability. After understanding the third hybrid ability, Gray was pleasantly surprised. Resurrecting dead creatures with the same abilities as when they were alive was a more powerful ability than Ghost and Corpse Control. The Ghost ability could control the souls of dead creatures and turn them into one's own combat strength. The Corpse Control ability could control the bodies of dead creatures and turn them into one's own combat strength. However, neither of these methods could allow the creatures to have the same abilities as when they were alive. However, the Resurrection ability could. The creatures resurrected by this ability would have the same abilities as when they were alive. In other words, they would have the same combat strength after being resurrected by the Resurrection ability. Generally speaking, except for the flesh-type blood fiends, the other blood fiends' combat strength could not be compared to when they were alive. However, this Resurrection ability could avoid this drawback. One could imagine the value of this ability. The combat strength one had when they were alive would be the same after they were resurrected. The Ghost ability can control the soul, the Corpse Control ability can control the body, and the Reverse Nurturing ability can repair the body. When these three abilities are mixed together, they form the Resurrection ability. Gray sighed at the wonders of the hybrid ability. When certain abilities that could be combined together were combined, a new ability would be born, bringing about abilities far beyond one's expectations. Strictly speaking, this wooden monkey shouldn't be the same wooden monkey as before. Gray guessed that although the wood monkey's body had not changed, its soul was no longer the original soul. The original soul had turned into a material and was molded into a new soul under Gray's control by the resurrection ability. Since I want to use the soul as a material to mold a new soul, then the time of death cannot be too long. Otherwise, the soul will collapse, and even the resurrection ability will be useless. After thinking for a while, Gray took out the Fox Blood Fiend's corpse from the purple ring and tried to use the resurrection ability on it. As expected, the resurrection ability had no effect on the Fox Blood Fiend. After a few days, the Fox Blood Fiend's original soul had already collapsed, and the resurrection ability was naturally useless. The resurrection ability is definitely an extremely powerful ability, but there should be a limit to it. If there was no limit to the resurrection ability, Gray felt that he would be invincible in this world with this ability alone. However, Gray knew that the resurrection ability must have a limit. No ability could be strengthened without a limit. After placing the wood monkey in the woods with the wooden house, Gray fell asleep and only woke up in the afternoon. For the next few days, Gray would go to the night forest every night to search for desolate level blood fiends. Over the next few days, after removing his control over the wolf, bird, and tiger blood fiend spirits, the number of desolate level blood fiend spirits under his control had increased to 20. However, he soon realized that he could no longer control any more spirits. Obviously, like the ability to control corpses, the upper limit of the ability to control spirits was also 20 spirits of the same level. Through this, Gray was even more convinced that the resurrection ability should also have an upper limit. This upper limit was very likely to be 20 spirits of the same level. After a few days, Elise's wedding ended, and the nobles from all over the world left one after another. Fergus Castle once again regained its former tranquility, but this time, there was one more member. After a few days of busy work, the Fergus family was as tired as Gray, a person who reversed day and night. After dinner, the Fergus family had a small gathering. Such gatherings were held almost every night, and the purpose was to quickly integrate the new member into the Fergus family. The castle security is a big problem. Bernal sighed softly. This time, apart from the nobles of Sydney, there were also nobles from other parts of the Purple Moon Kingdom who came to attend Elise's wedding. Because of Gray, the Fergus family had connections with many of the kingdom's nobles. Therefore, there were many nobles from the kingdom who came this time, and each of them had a high status. With so many nobles gathered, safety was naturally the most important thing. If there were any accidents, the Fergus family's reputation in the Purple Moon Kingdom would definitely plummet. During the process of arranging the guards, he deeply felt the weakness of the Fergus family's guards. Even if the nobles and the Red Wing were mobilized, the strongest were only ferocious blood warriors. They were as weak as a piece of paper. Fortunately, there were no accidents. Otherwise, the Fergus family would definitely become the target of public criticism. It is indeed a problem, but there's no other way. The Fergus family's foundation is still too weak. Earl Fergus furrowed his brows. Although the current Fergus castle had Gray as a powerful fighter, its overall strength was generally on the low side. This was not something that could be improved in a short period of time. How about hiring from the outside? Gray had an idea and said, if you hire, loyalty is a problem. Also, if the hired people are too weak, it's useless. If they are too strong, the demand for salary will be high. The Fergus family might not be able to afford it. Earl Fergus shook his head and did not think highly of it. In terms of salary and loyalty, I have a way. Gray said, with the ability to revive, he could definitely go out and catch some able-bodied men. There was no need to worry about their loyalty at all. Of course, these able-bodied men that he caught, he would definitely choose the most heinous and vicious people. This way, he would not feel any psychological burden. The next day, outside the forest that had been designated as a forbidden area beside Fergus Castle, 3 masked figures silently appeared here. Is this the forest? One of them asked. Yes. According to our investigation, he usually cultivates in this forest during the day. The 3 figures were all masked. One of them, an old man with white hair, spoke. Why don't we take action at night, when his vigilance is at its lowest? The last person asked. According to His Highness Nikel's speculations, the other party has the ability to control corpses. With a king-tier corpse under his control, his vigilance will not be lowered even at night. On the contrary, night is the time when his vigilance is at its highest. Monster, the old man with white hair said. Monster. He even has the ability to control corpses. The other two masked men had a trace of shock on their faces. To have such a terrifying ability to control corpses, this Grey Fergus was simply a monster in human form. Let's go. With the silver weapons prepared by the kingdom, he will die for sure this time. Pu. The patrolling soldiers were killed before they could even make a sound. The three of them went deep into the forest. Chapter 500. In an open space in the forest, beside an exquisite wooden house, a giant beast was crawling. This was a giant lizard beast that was 15 meters long. It had a single horn that was 2 meters long on its head, and its body was covered in huge blue scales that looked like huge sapphires embedded in them. On its blue scale armor, there were many complicated patterns. They were dark gold in color and complemented the blue scale armor perfectly. It was filled with a mysterious beauty. A faint pressure was emitted from the giant beast. With this place as the center, everything within a few miles was quiet. There were no chirps of birds, and not even a single bird or beast could be seen. After reaching the desolation level, Gray had begun to cultivate the king-level blood technique. This purple blood beast was the Phantom of the Thunder Dragon, a king-level blood beast that Gray had summoned when he was cultivating the blood technique. The vigilance during the day is indeed the lowest. About 100 meters away from the open space in the forest, 3 masked men silently crept into a bush. Seeing the Phantom of the Thunder Dragon in the open space, their eyes turned cold. They had made the right choice to attack during the day, which was out of the norm. Needless to say, Lin Huang, who was immersed in his cultivation, had definitely lowered his sense of danger to a minimum. Just to be safe, let's attack here. After all, with the power of a silver-level magic weapon, a distance of 100 meters is nothing. Among the three, the white-haired elder took out a silver-level magic weapon, the Crimson Spear, from his rune space bag. His face was solemn. The more he knew about Grey Fergus, the more he understood how terrifying he was. He did not dare to be careless, so he attacked with all his strength, hoping to kill Lin Huang as soon as possible. Even if he could not kill him, he wanted to severely injure him. The power of blood poured into the Crimson Spear, and it was like a giant beast that had been resurrected. It emitted a terrifying wave, and in the next moment, a huge crimson flame pillar spread out, attacking Gray, who was in the Phantom of the Thunder Dragon, about 100 meters away. Whoosh! The crimson flame pillar had reached the king level, and its destructive power was terrifying. Wherever it passed, the plants were turned to ashes, and the ground was scorched black. A straight line quickly spread out, reaching Gray, who was in the Phantom of the Thunder Dragon. Not good. While he was cultivating, Gray suddenly felt his heart palpitate. Then, he saw a huge blood-red pillar of flame, emitting a terrifyingly high temperature, coming toward him. Its speed was extremely terrifying. He had no time to dodge at all, and was already hit by the huge blood-red flame pillar. Boom! A terrifying explosion spread out from the center of the open space in the forest, and blood-red flames spread in all directions. The exquisite wooden house was reduced to ashes, and all the plants within 1,000 meters were burned to ashes by the blood-red flames. Dirt and gravel flew everywhere, and a huge crater appeared on ground. In the blink of an eye, the empty space in the forest, which was only a few dozen meters wide, expanded to 1,000 meters wide. The ground was scorched black, and the blood-red flames burned fiercely, spreading even further. The air was filled with heat, and in the center of the scorched land, the ground had even melted into red lava. It was an ordinary day. In Fergus Castle, Earl Fergus was dealing with daily affairs, Bernal was assisting, Caroline was reading in the library, and Sarah was practicing blood magic in the training field. Boom! Suddenly, a deafening sound alarmed everyone. Everyone hurriedly rushed out of their rooms to the open space in the castle. Looking in the direction of the sound, they could not help but turn pale. A forest not far from the castle was burning fiercely. The flames were several dozen meters high, and that direction was the forest where Gray usually cultivated. "Brother!" Sarah's face was full of worry as she quickly rushed to the forest outside the castle. "Gray!" Bernal gritted his teeth and also rushed to the forest outside the castle. "Come back!" Count Fergus shouted loudly, forcefully stopping the two of them. "Father, something must have happened to Gray," Bernal said anxiously. "I know." Earl Fergus clenched his fists, and his fingernails had unknowingly sunk into his flesh. His expression was grave and worried. "But with our strength, we won't be able to help at all. Instead, we'll be a burden to Gray. Now, we can only trust in Gray and believe that he'll be able to get through this." In the open space in the forest, the surroundings were burning fiercely. Outside was the scorched earth, and in the center was the fiery red magma. He succeeded? Seeing the power of this attack, even the white-haired elder who had personally attacked could not help but feel shocked. Although there was only a gap of one level between the king and the third level of the desolate level, the difference in strength was too great. The difference in strength between the two was like the difference between an adult and a child. Probably, looking at the power of this attack, a masked man felt his mouth go dry. He could not be sure whether the other party was dead or not, but if it were him, he would definitely have died from this attack. He's definitely dead. No matter how strong he is, he's still not a king. After taking a hit from a king, he'll definitely die. Another masked man spoke, but halfway through he suddenly felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. He subconsciously looked at the magma and suddenly felt a chill on his back. In the direction of the magma, a figure walked out of the magma. Boiling magma dripped from the other party's body, but the other party did not seem to feel any pain. As the other party walked out of the magma, all the magma fell away, revealing the other party's figure. Other than the close-fitting clothes that seemed to be made from the leather of a king-level blood fiend, the other clothes were all gone. The exposed skin was bronze in color, and there were obvious scorch marks. However, this was clearly not a serious injury, and this person was their target, Gray Fergus. No, impossible. The masked man was shocked. The masked man was shocked. He had been hit by a king-level attack, but he had only been slightly injured. It was unbelievable. According to his understanding, even a king-level powerhouse would not have suffered such a minor injury after taking a direct hit like this. How strong was the other party's defense? Was it even stronger than a king-level powerhouse? Monster, cold sweat slid down the other masked man's forehead. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Gray, who was walking out. They even used a silver-level magic weapon. They really think highly of me. Looking at the three masked men, Gray immediately noticed the blood-red spear in the hands of the white-haired old man. His face revealed a trace of mockery. After reaching level 2 of the desolated level, Gray's defense had increased again. His strongest defense was able to withstand a level 3 desolated level attack without being injured. This defense was comparable to that of a king-level blood fiend. It was also because of this defense that he was not seriously injured by the king-level attack. Otherwise, although he would not have died, he would have been seriously injured. Are they from a Nahum family or the Flame Kingdom? Gray guessed the identities of these three people. Among his enemies, only the Nahum family or the Flame Kingdom could afford a silver-level magic weapon. Therefore, these three people could only be from one of these two forces. His strong defense will not last long. Let's attack together. The white-haired old man's face was solemn under the mask. He poured the power of blood into the blood-red spear in his hands, and another huge pillar of blood-red flames crashed towards Gray. Swish, swish. Two figures, one big and one small, suddenly appeared in front of Gray. One of the figures was wearing a silver mask and had a saber hanging from his waist. It was Stanley Grinton. The other figure was 9 meters tall. It stood upright and was covered in golden scales. It was the King Beast. Boom, boom, boom. As soon as it appeared, the King Beast rushed towards the huge pillar of blood-red flames and violently punched it. Boom. There was a terrible explosion. The King Beast's fist was charred black, and its huge body flew backwards like a golden meteor. The red flames from the explosion rushed towards Gray and Stanley Grinton. Facing the red flames, Gray and Stanley Grinton moved. They rushed towards the three masked men. That giant beast should not be dead. You guys block the silver masked man and the giant beast. I will deal with Gray Fergus. The white-haired old man ordered the other two masked men. The blood-red spear in his hand stabbed towards Gray. Whoosh! A huge greenish-black tornado formed under his spear. It spun and hit Gray. The blood-red pillar of flames was the ability of the blood-red spear, and this wind ability was his own. Although it was his own ability, it was amplified by the blood-red spear. Its power was also at the king level. The speed of a king's attack was extremely terrifying. There was no time to dodge. Gray's long sword was filled with black fog, and it became several meters long. He slashed at the huge greenish-black tornado. Bang! The black greatsword slashed at the greenish-black tornado, but it was easily knocked aside by the greenish-black tornado. The greenish-black tornado wrapped around Gray, cutting into his body like a series of greenish-black giant blades. The surrounding ground was full of crisscrossing cracks. Gray was wrapped in the greenish-black tornado and slid backwards. Although the power of the black fog had reached the limit of the third level of the desolate level and was extremely close to the king level, it was still not at the king level. There was still a huge gap between it and the king level. Gray was wrapped in the greenish-black tornado and slid for hundreds of meters before he could break free. There were dozens of scratches on his body. Fortunately, his defense was comparable to that of a defense-type king-level blood fiend. These scratches were only minor injuries. On the path he had been carried by the greenish-black tornado, the ground was a mess, and there was a ravine that was hundreds of meters long on the ground. At this moment, the huge red pillar of flames attacked again. Obviously, the opponent did not want to give him a chance to breathe. Whoosh! Gray's face turned solemn. The huge sword wrapped in black fog slashed at the greenish-black tornado again. Although it could not block it, it could at least weaken some of its power. Boom, boom, boom. Facing the attack that was comparable to a king-level attack, Gray was sent flying several times. The ground was full of crisscrossing cracks. Crack! The black greatsword collided with the tornado once again. Suddenly, a crisp sound rang out. Then, the huge black sword in Gray's hand was shattered. Not only was the fog wrapped around it broken, but the innermost magic sword was also shattered. In the face of a king-level attack, even a pinnacle bronze magic weapon would be fragile. This was why every country had to equip their king-level fighters with silver-level magic weapons.